Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for Saturday, December 9th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder and here with Ted O'Grady in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Moon. And let's start with our weather as we do. And it's 30 degrees now in the Cheongguk area, cloudy. And we expect to dip into the 20s, upper 20s before the sun rises in about 2 hours plus. And probably there will be a little bit of snow before the sun rises, but that's not going to be the main thing today. Snow in earnest will start falling sometime in the late morning in the Cheongguk area between 9 and 10 o'clock, and then be snowing through the day, perhaps off and on. They're expecting 1 to 3. We're expecting 1 to 3 inches of snow. Most of it will be over by about 7 o'clock or so, but still a possibility of a few more flurries until around midnight, and then it should stop around then. Tomorrow, as you're coming to church, those of you who are coming from the east, from New Jersey and New York, you can probably expect less and less snow as you come into Pennsylvania, come west. There is a snowstorm that is actually if you look at the radar, you can see that the snowstorm is along the Atlantic coastline, and you can see that blue stuff. All that blue stuff you see there is snow, and you can see that here in Pennsylvania, really catching the edge of that. Philadelphia, I think, is expecting 6 to 10 inches. Wow. No, 3 to 6 inches, I'm sorry. 3 to 6 inches in Philadelphia, it looks like. And New York City, I'm looking at the map here. 3 to 6 inches in New York City as well. That should be a mess. So up and down the 95 corridor, I-95 corridor, 3 to 6 inches there. So looks like it's going to cause quite a bit of traffic problems over there along the I-95 corridor in the major cities from Boston to New York and down, I think, all the way down to Washington, D.C. and further south. But here in the northeast Pennsylvania, we're just catching the kind of the edge of that, and so we're expecting 1 to 3 inches in the Cheongguk area and perhaps a 1 inch here in the Newfoundland area where I'm broadcasting from right now. And then there may be a little more snow Sunday evening, and then on Tuesday also a little bit of snow. So that's what we're going to have for the next few days, but probably not barely plowable. I think usually we say 4 inches is plowable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my first snow here in the Poconos.
Oh, really?
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think the guy I've contracted to plow my driveway, we have an agreement that he'll only plow if it's 4 inches.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If it's less than 4 inches, don't bother.
Are you by a paved road, or you're an unpaved road where you live?
Well, I'm by a paved road where I live. In other words, the road in front of my house is paved.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I live up in Hawley, and I'm in this estate with an unpaved road.
Mm-hmm.
All these potholes, so I'm really curious to see whether or not I'll be here tomorrow morning.
I see.
I hope so.
Well, the good news is when it freezes, the potholes no longer make any difference.
Oh, right, okay.
They're all smooth. But is that a downhill road?
Yeah, it kind of goes downhill, and then it gets to the paved road, so I should be okay. I just should position the car in the right direction. So
it won't be any problem getting downhill.
Yeah.
You may have a problem getting back uphill. I don't know.
We'll see.
This is the world we live in during the wintertime in the Poconos.
Okay.
Quite different from the other 3 seasons of the year. The battle with nature begins.
It's going to be fun, Tim.
Yes, it's going to be fun. The battle with nature begins. All right. So that is our. I think winter is a kind of a testing period, to see who is strong enough to survive.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of the time when plants and trees. Well, some of them die during the winter.
True.
If they're not strong enough. Most people survive.
Okay.
But even most people, some people die of a heart attack while shoveling snow and that kind of thing. So it's kind of a way of weeding out the weak. That's nature's way of doing that, I think.
I'll tell you one positive thing you do have, Tim.
What is that?
The UK, where I lived for the past 14 years, is that you got more light in the wintertime here.
You do? Oh, more light, you say?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
More light. So it gets dark around 4:30, 5
yes.
o'clock.
Uh-huh.
So up there, in the dead of winter, it gets dark at like 2:30, 3 o'clock. Mm. And, the suicide rate goes way up in the wintertime.
Yeah, that's why I say you got to be strong to survive the winter.
So what about here in the Poconos? The suicide rate goes skyrocketing in the wintertime?
I don't know. I haven't checked that.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, let's be strong with the Word of God. So let's go to our Rimas. I'm in the book of Judges this morning, chapter 6. And this is a part of the story of Gideon. When Gideon perceived that he was an angel of the Lord, Gideon said, "Alas, O Lord God, for I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face." And the Lord said unto him, "Peace be unto thee, fear not, thou shalt not die." Then Gideon built an altar there unto the Lord, and called it Jehovah Shalom. Unto this day it is yet in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. And it came to pass the same night that the Lord sent to him, "Take thy father's young bullock, even the second bullock of the 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that thy father hath, and cut down the grove that is by it." So the father had so there was a religious conflict within the family.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the father had an altar to Baal, and Gideon was faithful to the Lord. "And build an altar unto the Lord thy God upon the top of this rock, in the ordered place, and take the second bullock and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood of the grove, which thou shalt cut down." So he did that, and in verse 27 and then verse 28, this was not a popular thing. No. People didn't exactly praise him for it. "And when the men of the city rose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was cast down, and the grove was cut down that was by it, and the second bullock was offered upon the altar that was built. And they said to one another, Who hath done this thing? And when they inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, hath done this thing. Then the men of the city said unto Joash, Bring out thy son, that he may die, because he hath cast down the altar of Baal, and because he hath cut down the grove that was by it. And Joash said unto all that stood against him, Will ye plead for Baal? So the father is taking the side of the son, because they want to kill his son.
Okay.
Right? You have to choose between Baal and his son, and he chooses his son. Will ye save him? He that will plead for him, let him be put to death while it is yet morning. If he be a god, let him plead for himself, because one hath cast down his altar. Therefore on that day he called him Jerubbaal, saying, Let Baal plead against him, because he hath thrown down his altar. So Gideon got a new name. Then, as I read further in chapter 6, all right, skipping here to verse 36, okay. Gideon, I don't know what was in his mind here.
Okay.
And Gideon said unto God, If thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said, behold, I will put a fleece of wool in the floor. And if the dew be on the fleece only, and it be dry upon all the earth beside, then shall I know that thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said. All right? So he's testing God, or he's asking God for a sign.
He wants to get his confidence up before he goes to battle.
Well, and it was so, for he rose up early in the morrow and thrust the fleece together, and then wringed the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. Okay? So you'd think that would be enough.
You'd think so.
And Gideon said unto God, Let not thine anger be hot against me, and I will speak but this once. Let me prove, I pray thee, but this once with the fleece. Let it now be dry only upon the fleece, and upon the ground let it be dew. So he says, now, okay, do the opposite, God. I mean, he's lucky that God is a God of patience and endurance, I tell you. And God did so that night, for it was dry upon the fleece only, and there was dew on all the ground. Come on, Gideon.
You need
get with the program.
You need a verification.
Verification. The Rima that I drew this morning was I sort of read more than I think was needed, but because I was interested in the story. And the Old Testament is so interesting that once you start reading it, it's hard to stop.
I love the way they contend with God.
Yeah,
they bargain with God.
They bargain with God. Abraham,
it's the Jewish nature to bargain.
Yeah, I guess
you
so.
You see it in the Old Testament.
I guess so. But here, Gideon perceived that he was an angel of the Lord. Gideon said, "Alas, O Lord God, for because I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face." And the Lord said unto him, "Peace be unto thee, fear not, for thou shalt not die." Of course, we learn the divine principle, and this is one of the things that I think Father really revolutionizes or changes our thinking, that the angels are not above us. They are above us. They are above fallen human beings, because human beings fell to the point where we are lower than creation at the time of the fall, and we've been sort of working our way up through. God has been leading us to work our way up through providential history. But even at this point, already, even though Gideon sees an angel and he says, "Uh-oh, I've seen something that I shouldn't see. I'm going to die. God's going to kill me." God says, "Don't worry. You're not going to die." And at this point today, we need to understand very clearly that we're in the position to have dominion over the angels and all other beings in creation. A few days ago, about a week ago, I guess, I did a Q&A session with some Japanese members through Zoom. About the Constitution, and not only about the Constitution, but they could ask any question they asked. And one sister asked me, "Do I believe in aliens, or do I, it's this kind of things."
Do you, Tim?
So, and she said she had read where some people had actually seen aliens and this kind of thing. Okay. Well, actually, last Sunday, coincidentally, I think it was last Sunday, the king addressed this issue.
He did.
Yes. Oh, I did not report to him that I'd received this question.
Really?
Yes, but he's addressed this issue. And he said that aliens were low spiritual beings.
Okay.
He quoted Father as saying that. And I do remember that I once read a printout of a series of question and answers that Father gave when he visited the United States in the 60s. And there someone asked him about, I think they asked, actually the question was about flying saucers. And Father said something, just speaking from memory here, that flying saucers were things that were created by spirits who are so low that they don't realize that you don't need modes of transportation in the spirit world.
Oh, really?
They think that in order to get around spirit world, you need to be able to ride something.
So can we create our own flying saucers in the spirit world then?
Apparently so, yes. But you don't need them, as Father's point.
You don't need them.
Yeah, you don't need them. And so flying saucers are spirit beings, that spirit selves, who think they need something to ride on in order to get around spirit world, because they don't know about spirit world, because they're such a low level. But anyway, I told her that, to my question last week, I told her that if they exist, they are part of the creation over which we have dominion.
That's a good answer.
All right. So they are not equal to or superior to human beings in terms of God's creation, because God gives human beings dominion over all creation. Over all creation. So this is what I was what I received again from this Rima this morning.
That's really the point, isn't it, Tim? We need to cut down the altars of Baal.
Yes.
Within ourselves and all around us.
Yes.
That's what we're all about. That's what we're all about, isn't it? That's what the Sanctuary Church is doing, is cutting down altars of Baal.
Yes, we are.
And, the Sanctuary Church was spawned out of a family squabble as well.
Well, unfortunately, yes, it wasn't necessary now.
No, but the righteous king stood up and cut down the altar of Baal.
Yes.
And if he hadn't, we wouldn't have any Sanctuary Church.
That's right, yes. It's unfortunate that the king did not inherit everything that True Father intended him to inherit. Think how much, really the world would be a different place today if the king had been able to inherit what Father, and if he and Kukjinim had been able to continue the work that they were doing, because they were already reaching the highest levels in both Korea and the United States. And in 2013, beginning in April of 2013, they started rebuilding that foundation, really from a material point of view, from nothing, from zero, because they left everything behind. That was all the public assets behind when they left. But fortunately, Kukchinim had the foresight, and not just foresight, but had been given the wisdom by God to have his own economic foundation, which obviously has been very, very crucial in sort of rebooting God's providence. It was a reboot in 2013. Reboot.
That's right.
Yes. And when you reboot your computer, you have to sit and wait a while the computer sort of churns and churns and churns. And I don't know about your computer, but my computer churns a few minutes. It doesn't come up right immediately.
Right.
But now we're almost there. We're almost there.
Yeah. It kind of goes like this, Tim. In the beginning stages, it's slow, slow.
Right.
And then you start reaching this tipping point, and then
that's right.
We're right here now. Mm-hmm. We're starting to fly.
Yes.
But what's interesting about that as well is that we notice once the altar of Baal is cut by the righteous son, then the Father naturally comes close to the Son.
Yes.
So it's also restoration of the Father-Son relationship.
When the chips were down. Yeah, when the chips were down.
Certainly has happened with our King.
The Father was supporting the Son, yes.
And with us as well, Tim. We've inherited that. So we are fortunate.
We want to go to the Cheonsonggyong Rima this morning because it's actually kind of related.
Okay.
It's actually very related. And the English here is a little bit awkward, unfortunately, because the Korean is written quite well. I think this is what I feel when I translate. If something's written well in Korean, I want to express it well and good. If it's in good Korean, it should be expressed in good English. If it's in awkward Korean, I sometimes still do good English, but it's unfortunate here though that good Korean has been translated into somewhat awkward English, which could be improved. And this is, the King James Bible is a translation. Yeah. And yet it's one of the classical works of Elizabethan English. And I think that's really an amazing thing, and it's a model that we should strive for in the future, where the English translations of Father's words should be go down in history as examples of the best English prose. Unfortunately, that's not true in this case. So anyway, we'll go into it. If you go to the mountains, you can find a lot to eat. I'm on page 1902 in the English Cheonsonggyong. This is the book on the Pacific Rim Providence, chapter 2, page 1902. If you go to the mountains, you can find a lot to eat. Even rabbits survive in the mountains, so why can't people live there? When you go to the countryside, there are lakes and rivers, but though there are a number of fish in the lakes and rivers, you do not even know how to catch and eat them. I am trying to teach all that to you. Also, it is all right for you to go hunting when it is the hunting season. Do you know how to use a gun? You can live on hunting too. You can survive for a year if you catch one bear. So why not conduct further research on such matters? The word spoken in 1984. Wow. So Father advocating hunting. So Father asks, do you know how to use a gun? He's encouraging people to learn how to use a gun. And he says, and I remember a tweet by Lisa Ellenson when she caught her deer. Yeah. And she said, "Oh, now I can feed my family meat for the entire winter." That's good. Yeah. That's good. That's very good. Yeah.
It's kind of life without money, Tim. Father's always encouraged us to become part of the natural world. Father himself experienced God through nature, and it's a great comfort, really, to go into nature. Yes, and feel the love of God through nature. But to take dominion really is, that kind of quote, I think went over my head in 1984. Didn't seem relevant with the work I was doing at the time, which was related with money or fiat currency, which actually is valueless. Actually, it has no intrinsic value whatsoever. It's just a piece of paper, maybe 1 cent. So Father has always been trying to give us true value within ourselves as to become who we are as children of God, take dominion, and love and experience that through nature. So actually, ideally, we could have a society where we are not bound by money, we're not bound by debt, we're not bound by these pressures which are artificial. We could actually take dominion over the created world and build a world where God is present with us all the time.
Yeah, he's saying, rabbits can survive in nature, so why can't you? And rabbits and other animals know what to eat and what not to eat, but we don't know that. We're ignorant. Many of us are ignorant. The king often teaches if you take a walk through the woods with the king, it's basically a biology lesson. Really. So yes, he will point out, okay, this is good for that, and this is good for this, and this is poisonous, and that's not, and he'll. I think it's quite an experience to walk through the woods with him, because he has a wealth of knowledge about all the plants, and this is how we should be in order to have dominion. Father said, one of the famous sayings of Father that we often quote is that there is no perfection in ignorance.
I remember the first thing that intrigued me about the king was when I was, way out there in the wilderness, just curiously watching on YouTube in the early days, and he was out there making pine needle tea with his little fire out in the woods. And it struck me how much he paid attention to detail, how deliberate he was, and his attitude toward what he was doing was very careful, and so it gave such a value to that cup of pine needle tea. And I thought, wow, this is something different. This is something interesting. This is an interesting person. I might want to get to know him more.
He is an interesting person. There's no doubt about that. Yes. All right. Let's stop with our rimas there, and let's take a break now, and we'll come back with some good news, interesting news after this break from a Chonryu perspective.
Boy, wasn't that fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially. It's just absolutely gorgeous.
All polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1 million.
Yeah. Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah, just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah. Model 27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run. Under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right. 341.
I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about, 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum, but it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So.
That sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, December 9th, 2017. Tim Elder and Ted O'Grady here for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jin-moon. I want to start with some good news that Fox has written a really good comprehensive article on what happened to ISIS after the Trump administration came to Washington.
Wow.
Good news for us, bad news for ISIS. And basically, the Fox News report is titled, Trump Mattis Turned Military Loose on ISIS, Leaving Terror Caliphate in Tatters. Coming from Baghdad, hundreds of ISIS fighters had just been chased out of a northern Syrian city and were fleeing through the desert in long convoys, presenting an easy target to U.S. A-10 Warthogs. But the orders to bomb the black-clad jihadists never came, and the terrorists melted into their caliphate, living to fight another day. The events came in August 2016. In other words, when Obama was in charge. Even as then-Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump was vowing on the campaign trail to let generals in his administration crush the organization that, under President Obama, had grown from a JV team, in quotes, to the world's most feared terrorist organization. Quote, I will quickly and decisively bomb the hell out of ISIS, unquote, Trump, who would name legendary Marine Corps General James Mattis as Secretary of Defense, promised, we will not have to listen to the politicians who are losing the war on terrorism. Just over a year later, ISIS has been routed from Iraq and Syria with an ease and speed that's surprised even the men and women who carried out the mission. Experts say it's a prime example of a campaign promise kept. President Trump scrapped his predecessor's rules of engagement, which critics say hamstrung the military, and let battlefield decisions be made by the generals in the theater and not bureaucrats in Washington. At its peak, ISIS had held a land in Iraq and Syria that equaled the size of West Virginia, ruled over as many as 8 million people, controlled oil fields and refineries, agriculture, smuggling routes, and vast arsenals. It ran a brutal, oppressive government, even printing its own currency. The terror organization now controls about 3% of Iraq and less than 5% of Syria. Its self-styled caliph, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is believed to be injured and holed up somewhere along the lawless border of Syria and Iraq. ISIS remains a danger, as members who once ruled cities and villages like a quasi-government now live secretly among civilian populations in the region, in Europe, and possibly in the U.S. These cells will likely present a terrorist threat for years. In addition, the terrorist organization is attempting to regroup in places such as Philippines, Libya, and the Sinai Peninsula. But the military's job to take back the land ISIS claimed as its caliphate and liberate cities like Mosul in Iraq and Raqqa in Syria, as well as countless smaller cities and villages, is largely done, and it has taken less than a year. The leadership team that is in place right now has certainly enabled us to succeed, Brigadier General Andrew Croft, the ranking U.S. Air Force officer in Iraq, told Fox News. I couldn't ask for a better leadership team to work for, to enable the military to do what it does best. President Trump gave a free hand to Mattis, who in May stressed military commanders were no longer being slowed by Washington decision cycles or by the White House micromanaging that existed under President Obama. As a result of the new approach, the fall of ISIS in Iraq came even more swiftly than hardened U.S. military leaders expected. It moved more quickly than at least I had anticipated, Croft said. We and the Iraqi security forces were able to hunt down and target ISIS leadership, target their command and control. After the battle to liberate Mosul, ISIS Iraqi headquarters was completed in July. The U.S.-led coalition retook Tel Afar in August, Hawija in early October, and Rawa in Anbar province in November. Marine Colonel Seth Folsom, who oversaw fighting in Al-Qaim near the Syrian border, agreed. He wasn't expecting this part of the campaign against ISIS to get going until next spring, and figured that even then it would take 6 months or more. Instead, ISIS was routed in Al-Qaim in just a few days. We really had one mandate, and that was enable the Iraqi security forces to defeat ISIS militarily here in Anbar. And I feel that we have achieved that mission, Folsom said. I never felt constrained. In a lot of ways, I felt quite liberated because we had a clear mandate and there was no questioning that. Brigadier General Robert G-Man Sofke, the top U.S. Marine in Iraq, told Fox News his commanders have enjoyed not having to deal with too many distractions, and there was no question about what the mission here in Iraq was. We were able to focus on what our job was without distractions, and I think that goes a long way in what we are trying to accomplish here, he said. Sofke, in criticism that loosening rules of engagement put civilians at risk, is absolutely not true. We used precision strikes and completely in accordance with international standards, he said. We didn't lower that standard, not one bit, but we were able to exercise that precision capability without distraction, and I think the results speak for themselves. The U.S.-led coalition said this week the coalition civilian casualty assessment team has added 30 new staffers to travel throughout the region. It said military leaders continue to hold themselves accountable for actions that may have caused unintentional injury or death to civilians. The coalition also said dozens of reports of civilian casualties have been determined to be not credible, and just 0.35% of the almost 57,000 separate engagement carried out between August 2014 and October 2017 resulted in a credible report of a civilian casualty. In addition to air support, the U.S.-led strategy also includes training and equipping Iraqi troops on the ground. While the Trump administration's success is often underplayed in the U.S. media...
Really?
Really? Why would that happen? It is obvious on the ground in Iraq, according to a spokesman for Iraq's Ministry of Defense, Yahya Rasool. Quote, I was not optimistic when Trump first came to office, Rasool said, but after a while I started to see a new approach, the way the U.S. was dealing with arming and training. I see how the coalition forces were all moving faster to help the Iraq side more than before. There seemed to be a lot of support. Under Obama, we did not get this. Despite the victories on the battlefield, U.S. officials cautioned much work remains to be done. ISIS is very adaptive, noted Colonel Ryan Dillon, the U.S.-led coalition spokesman. We are already seeing smaller cells and pockets that take more of an insurgent guerrilla-type approach as opposed to an Islamic army or a conventional-type force. So we have got to be prepared for that. Mm-hmm. He said as a result, the coalition is adjusting some training efforts so the Iraqi forces, upwards of 150,000 have already undergone training, are equipped to address such threats and ensure long-term stability. Folsom said the worst thing we could do is not finish the job. If a country becomes a failed state, if it becomes a lawless region, you begin to set the conditions for what happened in the years before 9/11, he said. In those ungoverned spaces where we don't know what is going on, that is where those seeds of extremism begin to blossom.
Well, Matt, it's like a modern-day Patton.
Yeah.
Speed.
L'audace, toujours l'audace.
What is that?
It's French.
It's French.
It means audacity, always audacity. Move fast and accomplish the objective. But the next point is peace police, peace militia training.
Yes.
I mean, that's where the king and our vision comes in.
Yes.
With the young people training a couple of days a week at the palace, and some of us older guys pitching in.
So if they want to give long-term stability, yes, they should create a peace police, peace militia culture, a Chonigu culture there in Iraq. Unfortunately, I don't know if they're going to be doing that. Probably not, given the fact that is their cultural foundation is Islam. In Islam, I don't think is very conducive towards Chonigu culture. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not.
That's where the JC ethics come in, Tim. That's where, when America is centered on JC ethics, America's invincible. Mm-hmm. And our mission as sanctuarians, mm-hmm. in my opinion, is to embody those JC ethics, mm-hmm. train, and expand that to one sovereignty after another. Mm-hmm. So Second Amendment becomes globalized. Yes. One sovereignty after another. Yes. And that's where we're heading now. We got this conference coming up in Switzerland mm-hmm. soon. Mm-hmm. And we've got countries in Eastern Europe standing up like Poland, Hungary, Czech, Slovakia, these kind of countries, Austria mm-hmm. with a new young leader. So we got to kind of take that and fight now for Western Europe, for Britain, for guys like Tommy Robinson, and in France and Germany. So it's all happening, Tim.
I think, if God's side, we're in a time now when God's side stands up, we win. If we stand up and fight, we win. after 9/23, we saw women around America, mostly around America, standing up and becoming empowered in terms of fighting against sexual harassment. And then after the liberation of the victims of Islamic Jihad over the past 1,400 years on October 19th, that wasn't it? November 19th, I'm sorry, November 19th, when the king liberated those victims of Islamic Jihad. We see, I think we're beginning to see Islam crumbling.
Yes.
Because I think this is another example of the connection between the micro and the macro, where spiritual conditions are set by the king and those of us who are around the king on the micro level, and then that affects what is happening macro in the United States and around the world. But it's really great that President Trump has unleashed the military here, and this sends a message to other potential adversaries, real and potential adversaries as well, including and mostly, I would say, China, which is, in my view, the greatest threat right now to the United States. And it sends a message to China that if the United States gets involved in North Korea, the U.S. military is going to be unleashed. This is not going to be like the Korean War of 50 to 53, where politics hamstrung the military then. It's not going to be like the Vietnam War, where basically politicians lost the war despite the military winning every battle on the ground. It's going to be a situation where the military is going to be unleashed and where it's going to do what is necessary to accomplish the mission that it is given. And I hope the Chinese leaders are reading this article or getting assessments of their own that Trump is not Clinton, Trump is not Obama, he's not Bush, he's not even LBJ or Nixon. He's a man who lets the military do what it does best.
Fire and fury like the world has never seen, Tim.
Yes. I hope that doesn't happen.
Hope not.
And I hope the Chinese hope it doesn't happen, because the Chinese are in the best position of anyone to prevent that from happening. And I'm still hoping that the Chinese will do something to prevent that from happening. We'll go into an article in the Atlantic. I was reading this article last night. I'll try to find it during the next break. It was a very good summary, although the Atlantic magazine is a very globalist organization, but still it had a good article about this. Right, we'll do that a little bit later. And another story I want to cover is Spread the Swamp, Los Angeles Times. Trump administration wants to move government offices out of Washington.
That's a good idea.
Isn't it? This is actually, other smaller countries have done this. Korea, for example, built a whole new city for government offices. Actually, they tried it twice.
Okay.
They built it a little bit south of Seoul.
Okay.
That didn't work so well. So now they built it further south of Seoul. So now they have two new cities.
What's the idea?
The idea was to help depopulate Seoul. Hasn't worked.
Oh. Okay.
Hasn't worked. But anyway, let's get to this one. Amid the talk of draining swamps, restoring political might to blue-collar America, and turning off the spigot of taxpayer cash that showers Washington, a familiar battle cry is ricocheting through the city, move the bureaucrats out. Yesterday, I think we covered just a headline about how the 5 richest counties in America are all suburbs of Washington, D.C. And I used to live in Fairfax County, which is I didn't look at the list, but I'm sure Fairfax is one of them. And what happens there is that when you have a change of administration, especially when you have the other party coming into power, obviously new people are coming in from around the country to join the administration,
Right.
to fill jobs in the administration. What happens to the old people? They don't go.
No.
They stay. They stay. They get jobs in various think tanks and various, so they sort of are there in waiting, basically, hoping for their chance next time. So they don't leave.
Okay.
And so the saying in Washington was that real estate prices always go up when there's a new administration coming to town in Washington, in the Washington metropolitan area. And so now we see that the 5 richest counties in America are all suburbs of Washington. Having lived in that area, I know exactly how that happens.
Yeah.
And it's it is a symptom of big government, not just big government, but what is the word that I could use? Colossal government.
Gargantuan.
Gargantuan government. Right? It's beyond big government. It's just ridiculous government. And so, I think that on paper, I would say that this, of course, the devil is in the details, right? But on paper, at least, this is a very good idea to move these bureaucrats out. It has the ring of a Trumpian fantasy, dislodge the arms of the. This is in the L.A. Times, leftist. Okay. Dislodge arms of the federal government from Washington and reattach them in faraway places, spreading the wealth generated by these well-paid agency workforces and forcing senior bureaucrats to face the people they affect. I think that would be an excellent idea to get people. Washington was never designed, Washington was built on land that basically...
It was a swamp, wasn't it?
It was built on a swamp. Especially the State Department area.
Really?
In fact... they still call the State Department area Foggy Bottom in Washington. In fact, there's a subway station called Foggy Bottom in Washington, D.C. And basically it was land that Maryland and Virginia weren't all that excited about maintaining. It was basically useless land along the Potomac. And they did, and of course the founding fathers didn't think that it would be a good idea to put the capital in any one state. So they carved out, or they got land from Maryland and Virginia, 10 miles square, and Virginia later took back its land.
Did it?
But so basically, what you have now is the portion that Maryland gave, but it was never intended to be a place where people would come there and stay and remain.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't it true that D.C. itself, with the African Americans living there, it's quite crime-ridden and poverty-stricken in the inner city?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with I don't think it has to do with the racial makeup. I think that it has to do with the fact that gun control is very severe there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Like Chicago?
Pretty much like Chicago. It's one of the most controlled cities in the country in terms of gun control. And I think that the crime rate would go down quite a bit if they would allow citizens to carry and to be able to defend themselves. Probably then the criminals would move to Baltimore, which is already having a rough time with the crime this year.
But I would think, Tim, with all those rich liberals in Washington, they would have solved all that inner city problems in Washington, D.C. by now and had racial harmony and everything going great.
Yes.
Why isn't that not happening there?
We can get into that.
Where's the love, Tim?
Let's focus on this. The swaggering Interior Secretary from Montana is putting the finishing touches on his plan to move the headquarters of the 3 largest public lands agencies to the west. The Stanford economist representing Silicon Valley in Congress sees opportunity to strategically seed regions of the country with pieces of the federal bureaucracy that can benefit them and that they can benefit. The unlikely prospect of locating the Department of Transportation in Los Angeles is dangled by Republicans eager to show this crusade has bipartisan cred. There hasn't been so much buzz about getting Washington out of Washington since Franklin D. Roosevelt. Since 30,000 federal workers to Maryland after a presidential commission advised such moves would ensure the prototypical federal employee remains one of the people in touch with the people and does not degenerate into an isolated and arrogant bureaucrat. We need to find out what we can move, said Representative Tim Ryan, a Democrat from Youngstown, Ohio, who is seeking to create a commission that would identify parts of the bureaucracy that could be moved to economically distressed regions like his. A fellow Ohio congressman and political rival, Tea Party activist Warren Davidson, has mounted a parallel bureaucracy migration push. He calls it the Drain the Swamp Act. Really? None of it is so, but they're not reducing the size of the government. They're just spreading it out more thinly. Which
that's the beginning, though, isn't it?
Maybe it's a beginning. Maybe it's a beginning. I don't know.
It's a trend toward decentralization.
Maybe. I don't know.
I like the idea of having the Department of Transportation in L.A. because maybe Trump is thinking, well, maybe we can keep California from seceding. Maybe
I'm all for California seceding.
Well, no, I'm not, because you're going to get all kinds of Chinese investment at this huge border with Nevada. With that's what I'm worried about with California seceding.
Anyway,
that's a good idea.
None of it is going over well with diehard Washingtonians. Many scold that the idea will flame out the same way it did when the Clinton administration pondered and then dropped a big relocation initiative. And the Reagan administration did the same before it. When the House Government Oversight Committee passed a Divest D.C. resolution earlier this year that calls on all agencies to investigate moving out, Eleanor Holmes Norton, the non-voting House representative for Washington, warned that it would cost taxpayers a fortune, spread dysfunction throughout the bureaucracy, and economically devastate the region. Her Democratic allies on the committee were not impressed by the suggestion of the measure's sponsor, former Representative Jason Chaffetz, that maybe it could lead to the Department of Transportation moving to the traffic capital of the nation, liberal Los Angeles. Other Democrats, though, are intrigued by the possibilities of a redistributed bureaucracy. But, right now, during the election and so forth, it was pointed out that members of the bureaucracy come from the East Coast primarily.
Right.
They live in the East Coast. And so this creates transportation in L.A., maybe Houston, I would say. But anyway, but having bureaucrats, being in that kind of a liberal bubble, being just from the East Coast, creates this deep state that Trump is now having to fight. So, for example, if you move the Department of Transportation to the geographic center of the country, maybe where's that? Nebraska, Colorado, St. Louis. There you go. Yeah. It might be, I would say, a better idea, so that we can have some, start hiring some conservatives to fill some of these
great idea. Sounds
positions.
Like a great idea to me.
I don't know. Maybe once they get hired, they may become liberals. I don't know. Once they start working for the government. I don't know, but this isn't reducing the government, though. That's I think that's the problem that I see. It's not reducing it; it's spreading it out more thinly.
A lot of problems are geographical.
There's a lot of wisdom out. There's a lot of wisdom outside the Beltway," said Representative Ro Khanna of the Silicon Valley Democrat. Beltway, of course, being the I-495 that basically goes around Washington. It's called the Beltway there. He wants agencies to he wants agencies to more aggressively tap into it, as the Defense Department did when it set up a shop in Silicon Valley. Khanna, a Stanford economist, is among several in Washington's intellectual circles who say fading factory and farm towns are well positioned to benefit from the kind of relocations envisioned in plans like Ryan's. There are other reasons the movement has regained steam of late. While only 15% of the federal workforce is in Washington, it is where most of the top decision makers live and work. David Fontana, a professor at George Washington University Law School, who is writing a book about decentralizing the federal government, says their bubble is growing ever more insulated from reality. When you have this concentration of important people all in a single place, they form their own tight networks, immune to other influences, he said. Decentralizing that power away from the capital has long been a trend in other countries, Fontana said. This is not a crazy idea. The Trump administration will likely put it to the test soon. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, a Montanan, is aiming to move the headquarters of the Bureau of Land Management, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Bureau of Reclamation out of Washington as soon as logistically possible. Western politicians like Senator Cory Gardner are cheering him on. 99% of the nearly 250 million acres of land managed by BLM is west of the Mississippi River, and having the decision makers present in the communities they impact in Colorado or across the region will lead to better results, Gardner wrote in an email. He wants the Bureau headquartered in his state, and Colorado's Democratic Governor John Hickenlooper has joined Gardner's lobbying campaign. House Natural Resources Committee Chairman Rob Bishop, Republican of Utah, who held a hearing Thursday to examine Zinke's plan, said in an interview that his constituents are so distrustful of what they see as a heavy-handed National Park Service that he had to abandon his plan to elevate Dinosaur National Monument to a national park, a move that he hoped would lure a world-class research center to the state and boost tourism. He's hopeful Zinke's blueprint will ultimately ease those tensions by bringing more public lands management out west. Of course, the federal government actually needs to manage less land.
Right.
That's the important thing. But anyway, maybe moving it out west may have that effect. I don't know.
But at least if there's so much money coming in through the federal government, at least if you start decentralizing the bureaucracy,
yes,
then the tendency after that should be to have less, to diminish a bit. In other words, they're going to develop some local culture in those areas.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Some Democrats, though, see a sham at a time Zinke has also been unabashed about his plans to shrink the Interior Department's workforce. See? That's what we want, which includes pushing workers out by relocating them. Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relocation.
Relocation. People say, I don't want to go. I want to find it. I can't go. Right. My kids are in school. My kids don't want to leave their friends, so I'm not going to Montana. So, okay, fine. Hey, let's do away with this position. Let's not. We don't have to hire anybody. The reorganization is an exercise in weakening the Department of Interior by driving employees out, said Representative Raw. These names are sometimes so difficult to pronounce. Grijalva, a Democrat of Arizona. Grijalva? I don't know. Once they're gone, the extractive industries will be able to check off the top item on their wish list, getting the stewards of public land out of their way. A lot of the broader relocation debate is familiar, and some scholars project that while a few hundred jobs might get moved there might get moved here or there, the broader vision of moving large pieces of Washington officialdom hundreds or thousands of miles away will end up in the shredder, as tends to happen when outsized plans to reinvent and reimagine government. The politics are messy, the logistics are tough, and the status quo is entrenched.
That's the problem.
See, that's the problem. See, that status quo is entrenched. That is the problem. And yeah, I think anything they can do with that they can do to chip away with that entrenchment is a good thing. Well, this has perennial appeal. It is hard to pull off, said Andrew, another difficult name, a professor of government at Bodine College in Maine. There is also a danger of that. There is the danger that it could create problems instead of solving them. Matt Lee Ashley, a public lands expert at the Liberal Center for American Progress, warns that, see, the Liberal Center for American Progress, so ding, 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 okay. Let's see what he says, warns that accountability is undermined when agencies move away from the lawmakers and federal investigators who watch over them.
Can't keep an eye on them.
Can't keep an eye on them.
What about those special prosecutors?
He points to the scandal that enveloped the Minerals Management Service during the administration of George W. Bush. It had been set up in suburban Denver with a mandate to conduct the business of collecting $10 billion in royalties like a private company. It turned into a cesspool of corruption and bad behavior, according to federal investigators. Of course, the argument that Washington is the cure for corruption and bad behavior can be a tough one to make.
Why don't they just allow the local police to investigate them?
And the headaches,
the problem?
or downsize them. And the headaches and expense of shoehorning so many agency headquarters into this costly, congested town keep growing. The projected costs of a new FBI headquarters in suburban Washington escalated until they hit close to $2 billion. The plug got pulled on the whole project over the summer amid the rising price and difficulties pulling off the land swap it was designed around. Put the FBI headquarters in Chicago.
Yeah.
You know, right? So, yeah.
L.A.N.S.
South Side.
Yeah. Al Capone. But I mean, in regard to the status quo, I mean, just picked up one point there. We're all about that in the sanctuary. We're challenging the status quo.
Yes.
So
Very much
we,
so.
we think of ourselves as the micro. So whatever we do on the micro,
Yes.
really is setting the condition for the macro. So I think for us, our
they have
attentiveness.
Chicago or Detroit, they say there's a lot of office space in Detroit. Why not put the FBI headquarters there? They're very cheap. Anyway,
Sounds like
go
a great
ahead.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of us being attentive, doing our job, being united, being attendant to the King, being listening to God, being brave, challenging limitations, challenging the status quo. We're making conditions for these things to happen on the
Yes.
macro level. That's where the spiritual power will come from, Tim.
Yes.
That's our job here at the sanctuary.
All right. Why don't we take a break, and I'll come up with that Atlantic article on the Korean Peninsula. Let's take a 5-minute break now.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, December 9th, 2017. Tim Miller and Ted O'Grady in for the second king of Chun Hyung Jin Moon. Yesterday I was reading, I happened to read an article in the on chosun.com. It's a website of the Chosun Ilbo, which is one of the major newspapers in South Korea. And the lead article on their website was one by one of their reporters in Washington. And this reporter, I guess, had attended some sort of a debate or discussion in Washington at one of the think tanks about the Korean Peninsula. And she quoted Barry Pavel, the Senior Vice President Arnold Cantor Chair and Director of the Brent Scowcroft Center for International Security, as saying that the United States has to act within the next 3 months.
Okay.
Now we're running out of time, and the United States has about 3 months to act. And she said that this statement was made, I think she said on the 5th of this month. 3 months would be until about the beginning of March. And but while I was tracking down that information and trying to verify her information and so forth, I came across another article in the Atlantic Monthly, which actually I wanted to talk about this morning. Actually, I was talking to my wife, who is in Korea right now, asking her about the situation there, because the Koreans, they don't pay much attention to the missiles and everything like that. But what they are paying attention to is the fact that all this is likely to affect the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics.
Oh, right.
Oh, right. Yes. Oh, yeah.
I heard that's coming up soon.
Yeah,
Right?
that's in February. That's in the beginning of February, I think. But anyway, it's in February, and of course, Russia has been banned from those Olympics
Why is
for
that? Doping?
for the doping scandal. Apparently, there was a lot of doping going on during the Sochi Olympics, and so the International Olympic Committee has told them they cannot participate in the Pyeongchang Olympics. Although individual athletes will be able to compete under the Olympic flag.
Are they just nutritional supplements?
I don't know. But anyway, I don't know what all is going on there. It sounds a little bit to me like, right now, the globalists are trying to isolate Putin in Russia because he doesn't go along with them. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not. But anyway, the fact is that the Russians are not going to be there, or at least the Russian flag will not be there in the Pyeongchang Olympics. So that kind of, the Russian market, obviously, would have been nice for Korea to be able to tap in. It may be more difficult to do that now. And now, a few days ago, we read how NBC, which has the broadcast rights for the United States, is finding that many of its employees are not so eager about going to Korea. and also, apparently the stadium there is an open-air stadium.
It's going to be cold.
It's going to be cold if things work out. And I don't know if how much snow they're going to have. But if things work out the way they usually should for Olympics in the winter, it's going to be cold. And, a lot of Americans are feeling, Lindsey Graham was on a talk show last Sunday saying that now is about the time that the Department of Defense should stop sending dependent families to Korea, and that State Department should also stop sending and perhaps even start withdrawing some people from Korea, some non-essential civilians or dependents. And they're not doing that yet, but this was Lindsey Graham's opinion and suggestion. So this kind of thing is getting around, and so many Americans perhaps are not so eager to travel to Korea at this particular time to sit in a cold stadium to watch, freezing your you-know-what off, watching people...
Chinese people win gold medals.
Chinese people win gold medals. I don't know who's going to win the gold medals. With the Russian flag banned, I guess the Russian flag is going to win a lot of gold medals. But so this is a major concern to the Korean people. But anyway, the Atlantic Monthly, or is it just called The Atlantic now, has an article on the Korean Peninsula, which I found somewhat educational. The North Korea debate sounds eerily familiar, it says. So this is one aspect. You can say, oh, this happens every year. Well, usually it actually happens in the spring, because that's when the U.S. and South Korea have their big military exercise. Okay. And usually there's a buildup of tensions in the spring. But now it's actually happening in kind of year-round. Yeah. That's actually not so familiar. But anyway, the Trump White House talking about North Korea sounds eerily and increasingly like the George W. Bush administration in the run-up to the Iraq War. Officials make similar arguments about the necessity of acting against a gathering storm, proudly claim understanding of the adversary's motivations, express frustration at countries that should be likewise alarmed at the problem not supporting American policy, and believe the sand is running out in the hourglass before military attacks are required. They admit no alternative interpretation of the facts. They are blithely dismissing enormous damage their policy would incur for regional allies. They seem innocent of understanding the disastrous and isolating consequences of America's role in the world to choose preventive war rather than the moral heights of restraint in the face of threats. President Trump's National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster, repeatedly indulges the same apocalyptic rhetoric. North Korea's nuclear program is the most destabilizing development, I think, in the post-World War II period. The threat is increasing every day. The leadership is undeterrable. Others on the National Security Council staff compare North Korea to World War II Japan, a mobilized and militarized society, inherently and belligerently expansionist, constrainable solely by the exercise of superior military force. You can go back actually to World War II, and I think I took a class in college, or maybe it was part of a class, where the question was World War II preventable? Or at least the U.S. entry into World War II, or at least the Pacific War, was the Pacific War preventable? This is a class I took in Japan, so specifically it was looking at whether a war between the United States and Japan was preventable. And looking at the events that led up to World War II, you get a strong feeling that at some point you're kind of in a channel. You're kind of being in a flow of events that are beyond human control. And I've felt that way with Korea for some time now. Yeah, for some time now.
Since when?
For some, not years, but for months. For months. Yeah. Okay. For some months. That it just seems like things are going in a certain direction, and I don't know if anyone can stop it at this point. And I would say that if you compare North Korea to pre-war Japan, I would say that North Korea is even less rational, less preventable, and less. I don't want to say less rational, because North Korea has their own rationale. They have their own logic and reasoning. But certainly, the Japan had no illusions of military parity with the United States, whereas today's North Korea does. Kim Jong-un has said that he will initiate talks with the United States when he achieves military parity. That is a laughable and ridiculous thing, but that is his delusion that military parity is possible. And actually, one thing that I don't know, this is something that we might want to consider is what would happen if President Trump or the U.S., I don't know if President Trump has the authority to do this, but if the United States decided not to send a team to Pyeongchang,
okay,
we're going to stay away because it's too dangerous. We're not going to send our athletes there.
I would send up some kind of signal.
And I just wonder if this would feed into Kim Jong-un's delusion that he has achieved military parity with the United States, that America is now quaking in its boots so much.
Okay.
All right. So this is kind of a martial arts type move, where you're using the other person's momentum and other person's energy against himself, against that person. what this is just, maybe I'm kind of brainstorming here, but all right, this is brainstorming time, all right? I mean,
Okay.
my opinion is as good as
brainstorm.
anybody else's because no one else has a solution, right? What would happen if the United States, and I know the athletes, NBC, of course, would lose a lot of money, but that's not a bad thing.
No, you don't mind that.
They've already saved $30 million by not paying Matt Lauer his severance. I mean, they can afford to lose it. I wonder, what would happen? That just came out and said, "I'm sorry, we'd really like to go, but it's too dangerous, so we're not sending our team to Pyeongchang." That's something worth considering, I think. But anyway.
I think North Korea is just such a cult in North Korea. It's totally. Japan had a sort of Bushido militarism in the Second World War.
I talked to people about Japan, older people who were alive then, when I was there working for a newspaper there. This was about 30 years ago or so. And I asked them, what was it really like? I mean, did you really believe the emperor was God? And they said, "Are you kidding? No." This is the answer that I got from some of them. Of course, everyone pretended they did at that time because they had to. And this is, gets into what the king talks about, psychopaths and sociopaths.
Koreans as a whole, to me, Tim, Koreans are so pragmatic as a whole. Don't you think? I mean, when it comes to money and business, I mean, they're in there. Whether it's religion or whatever, they're on that. So I went, watching that video the other day about the North Koreans at the amusement park that they built with the guy walking around behind him. And all these people are just...
the king played that on Sunday, right?
Yeah, saying the same thing. And you wonder what's really in the back of their mind, or if their minds are they really so 100%...
but it doesn't matter.
Into that, or...
It doesn't, later on, they will come out and say, we didn't believe that stuff. I mean, some part of them will.
Yeah.
And, maybe Germans after World War II as well. Hey, I never really went along with that stuff. But they are going along with it now. And that's what matters. That's what matters. Because you got the leader that is creating a situation that is going to bring destruction upon the entire country, and they're letting it happen, as the Japanese did, as the Germans did. And they're just letting it happen. And at some point, sure, I know the Atlantic is a leftist organization, that media that is trying to poo-poo this, but you get to a point where somebody has to do something about it. I mean, Nazi Germany got to a point where someone had to do something about it. Japan got to a point where somebody had to do something about it. And if there isn't the ability to do something about it internally,
right.
And there was, I know the German military, there was an attempt on Hitler's life, which failed. And it would have been good if that had succeeded. I believe that they failed because the man who placed that bomb under the desk was actually trying to achieve two things: kill Hitler and survive himself.
I see.
Yeah, I think if he had just focused on one thing and martyred himself, maybe he would have succeeded. But anyway, but if they are not able to change course internally, as Germany was not apparently, and Japan was not apparently, and apparently as North Korea is not, then somebody has to do something about it. Who's that somebody going to be? It doesn't have to be America. I hope it is not America. I believe China should be the one to do something about this. China should be the one to do something about this.
You think China would have to have a strong military action against North Korea, or just do it economically?
They can figure it out. They're smart people.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, they're still their imports rose.
Yes.
Or the exports rose to North Korea,
Yes.
I heard. So
Yes.
where are they in all this?
I don't know. We don't know. We don't really know. But anyway, China is the one that needs to take responsibility, as Trump told Xi Jinping in April, and when he met Xi Jinping at Mar-a-Lago in April. We want you to do it, but if you can't do it or you won't do it, then we will do it. But Trump said to Xi Jinping, "We want you to solve this problem," and I hope that Xi Jinping really took that statement very, very seriously, because I know Trump did.
Yeah.
I know Trump did. He's the kind of person who would take that kind of thing very seriously. Anyway, going on here. The lines of arguments employed by the Bush administration in 2003 and the Trump administration in 2017 both rely on the same basic elements. Of course, it wasn't just Bush, in 2003. It was also Clinton in the 1990s when he was considering a strike against North Korea and came very close to doing it.
Yeah.
But, Atlantic wants to bash Trump and Bush. So anyway, let's go on. The adversaries' actions are increasingly threatening. It would be irresponsible to continue the policy trajectory of prior administrations. The adversary leadership cannot be considered rational. Their intent is not merely regime survival, but attacks on the U.S. and allies. International cooperation is inadequate to the threat, and retaliation after the first strike from the enemy is insufficient, either to deter or to punish. And as Mira Hopper has emphasized, the Trump administration argues that the U.S. must act before North Korea attains even more dangerous capabilities. They are reprising the argument made by the Joint Chiefs of Staff during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this is a good argument. This is a good argument because, politicians, the President of the United States, his first job is to protect Americans. Protect Americans. Yeah. And as I think Mattis, I believe, was pointing out, North Korea is now the third country in history to achieve the ability to threaten the United States with nuclear attack. First two being the former Soviet Union and China. And now North Korea has joined that, has become the third country.
But do they really have that capability?
Not now, but the point is that they are developing that.
Right.
And they're still apparently, we're told, still have not solved the problem of a reentry. But they could still do an EMP attack. They do have an attack capability of an EMP attack. Because that only has to explode above the atmosphere.
Right.
The government of Japan has publicly stated that it will only participate in military action in response to a North Korean attack. South Korea's prime minister has reassured his public that the U.S. has committed not to take military action without his approval, something McMaster elides by saying there will be consultations. I think that is a myth. Yeah, I don't believe that is the case. Clinton almost went to war with North Korea and stepped back, and it is said that part of the reason was that President Kim Jong-sam of South Korea did not give his okay. But that's only part of the picture, and maybe I think that kind of statement is basically designed to kind of boost the South Korean ego. I don't think that, I think if, especially maybe Clinton was foolish enough to do that, but certainly for President Trump, I don't think that the opinion of especially a leftist president in South Korea is going to carry much weight. Australia, too, is likely to opt out of a preventative war. How would the U.S. fight North Korea without the participation of those three allies? What would the political landscape of Asia be like in the aftermath of a unilateral U.S. attack on North Korea, opposed by America's closest regional allies?
They're overstating that a little bit.
Yeah, they are, and I think also they're overstating the willingness or the desire of the Trump administration to do a preventive war.
Is there any option to actually take them out? Are there any elements in North Korea that might go along with a coup, or is it possible to get a Navy SEAL team in there to take them out?
Maybe Navy SEAL teams have already been there. I don't know. But taking out Kim Jong-un, one person, Kim Jong-un, I don't think is going to solve the problem because he did not start the nuclear program, and he is not really even running it. I think. I don't think he's actually running it. I think it's being run by the military, and the military will continue to run it in the absence of Kim Jong-un.
Really?
Yeah, and they can always, come if he is taken out. He has a son who is, I think, about 7 years old right now. But if he dies, then they will need someone to step in as kind of a figurehead who happens to have the last name Kim. And there are plenty of people around who can fill that role. There are a lot of Kims. They can always bring a son or a cousin or a nephew out of the closet. Here, look what we found. Because North Koreans are not really told about the families of their leaders in the first place, and so Kim Jong-un is replaceable. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, he's not running the show there. I mean, he's he's being given the obviously he can kill anybody he wants and that kind of thing. So in that sense, he's running the show. But actually, the military is running the show. Yeah.
I suppose it's difficult to get full intelligence about what's actually going on there.
Well, it's
in China,
actually
you know?
it's not just difficult; it's basically impossible. Yeah.
That's part of the problem I think in dealing with.
Yeah, and I think China and Russia have a lot better information than the United States. Russia, of course, has information because after the fall of the Soviet Union, some of the nuclear scientists who were working on the Soviet nuclear program got jobs in North Korea.
Really?
And I think that is one of the reasons why North Korea has been able to make such progress as they have. China, of course, has close relations with North Korea. As Mao Zedong said, they're in a lips and teeth relationship.
Same genes.
Have you ever bitten your lips? But China China has a lot of contacts in the military there, but of course their main contact got assassinated or got executed by Kim Jong-un, Chang Song-taek, Kim Jong-un's uncle, because in North Korea says that China has attempted a coup d'état already.
Really?
Yes, and that was why Kim Jong-nam, his half-brother, was killed with using nerve gas while he was in the terminal of the Kuala Lumpur airport. So that's why I say I'm not really counting on the Navy SEALs. I'm counting on the Chinese Navy SEAls. They're the ones that should take care of this. They're the ones that should take care of this. I mean, they want to be the superpower of the world. Okay, well, here's a problem that is on your doorstep.
Yeah.
How are you going to be the superpower of your world if you can't even take care of this problem? We're not going to go into Cuba, right? So maybe North Korea is China's Cuba. I don't know.
We still have the Monroe Doctrine over here.
Yeah, we do.
In theory, eh?
In theory, anyway, yes.
You know, the U.S. has this tradition of having two huge oceans on either side, and this reluctance to get involved.
And China is trying to
affairs.
develop something similar, where it wants to close out the United States from East Asia, and so from Chinese national interest, it would be terrible if the United States were to take out, do a military action against North Korea, and as a result, increase its influence in the Korean Peninsula. China doesn't want that.
No.
So that's why I'm saying to Xi Jinping, do something about this, all right? Right. So if the reason I want China to do this is because the human toll would be much less.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what Father wants. You know, Father's controlling this situation because it's his country, the place of his birth, and he's really in control of this situation. And maybe he wants the U.S. to do it. I don't know. Maybe I'm going against Father. I don't know. I haven't received a rema to that effect, though. All right. Today's rema about Gideon, I don't think it deters me from saying what I'm saying. Anyway, so.
I think you're right, Tim. You're right, Tim.
So, Father, if you want me to stop talking, then I'll put out some fleece.
But you have to do a second one.
I have to do this. No, you only have to do it once. I'll be convinced on the first one. Okay. Political policy analysts argue over whether senior figures in the administration, quote, the adults in the room, unquote, actually believe what they are saying. Are they trying to shore up American credibility to strengthen deterrence? Employing the madman gamut to diminish North Korea's negotiating advantage? Posturing to wring more cooperation out of the Chinese? Since administration policy treats North Korean leadership statements as actionable, that same rule ought to apply also to the American side. The administration's statements strongly prejudice policy towards military action. Well, it's not North Korean statements that are being considered as actionable. It's North Korean actions. Because North Korean statements have been, if you take it that way, then they've been actionable for a long time. Yeah. North Korea, every other day says we're going to turn Seoul into a sea of fire. All right. This is part of their everyday conversation. Yeah. So it's not North Korean statements. Atlantic is wrong there. It's the actions.
In the coffee shops in Pyongyang.
No, it's the missiles that are going up, and the advances that they're making. That's what the administration is looking at. The administration's statement strongly prejudiced policy towards military action. They have not only drawn a red line, they've attached a countdown clock to it. And again, I don't think they've drawn a red line. They have not really, and Trump has very pointedly stayed back from drawing red lines.
Trump never draws red lines. Trump always is a way out, as a negotiating position.
Yeah.
He's always negotiating.
And attaching a countdown clock to it. Well, yeah, what is this guy? Barry Pavel of the Scowcroft Center on International Security has drawn a red line, but he's a globalist. He's one of the ones that wants war. And certainly there are globalists within the administration. They've certainly, they're the ones that are really pumping up war, that's true. Trump will either fight a preventive war to disarm North Korea, or will be forced in humiliation fashion to dismantle a scaffold of his own construction, calling into question American security guarantees. One area in which the Trump administration, or he will finally, there's a third option that the Atlantic ignores. The third option is that finally Trump gets the Chinese to do something about this. All right.
Trump's always running circles around all these guys.
One area in which the Trump administration differs from Bush in 2003 is that President Bush invested his political capital in making the administration's case to the American public and internationally. Neither President Trump nor his cabinet have done anywhere near the kind of spade work necessary to bring Americans along for a war that will require calling up reserve military forces, kill tens, if not hundreds of thousands of South Koreans, reshape how the world views America, and consume all the political energy of the Trump presidency. President Trump was derisive about the Bush administration's mistakes in the Iraq War. It would be doubly tragic for him to repeat them if the Trump administration isn't re-examining their assumptions. They desperately need to be. They're lurching arrogantly toward disaster. Well,
I kind of doubt that, the whole theme of that article, to be honest.
Let's point out some of the differences between Bush and the Iraq War, anyway, the Iraq War and the current situation. In the Iraq War, U.S. was being fed what turned out to be, I think, fake intelligence that Iraq was, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And Colin Powell went before the United Nations, to show these photographs and everything like that. And that pretty much turned out to be, false. In this case, there's no doubt that there are weapons of mass destruction existing in North Korea, and that there are weapons of mass destruction are being pointed towards they're trying as hard as they can. They're making good progress in being able to deliver those weapons of mass destruction to the U.S. mainland. Another difference is that Bush finally resorted to saying, well, the world would be better without Saddam Hussein. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was actually pretty laughable, because there are a lot of people that the world would be better without, but we don't go around killing them. And in this case, there's a clear need to defend the American homeland.
Yes.
I know some people talk about the anti-missile systems and things like that.
We could wait till they lob a missile at L.A. and see if the anti-missile system works. If it hits L.A., well. But I mean, we could wait. You
present a tempting deal there. But as President of the United States, as long as California has not seceded, it is still his responsibility to protect all Americans, even those in L.A., even Hollywood. Sorry, people in L.A., they're still asleep. They're not listening.
Very many wonderful people in L.A., and there's great big Christian churches in L.A.
Yes.
Robert Schuller's out there waiting for the rapture.
I lost my train of thought. Yeah, well, here there is a clear. My point was that here there is a clear need to protect the U.S. Homeland. So, in that sense, the Atlantic is off target. But articles like this are useful, though, for us to bounce our thoughts and ideas off of. That's why I wanted to cover it this morning.
Well, what if we did wait, Tim? What if we did wait patiently for an attack? So similar to Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
So obviously, for the Europeans, for the Brits in particular, they went to World War II in August of 1939 when Hitler invaded Poland.
Yes.
So it wasn't until more than 2 years later, and the argument is, in general, is that FDR wanted to get into the war.
Yes.
So maybe had some pre-knowledge about what the Japanese might do.
Yes.
From the Japanese perspective, it was...
and they had broken the Japanese code at that point, yes.
They'd broken the code, and so the Japanese were expanding under the idea where the co-prosperity sphere,
Yes.
the economic sphere, so Hawaii might be part of that. So, I mean, we could kind of wait out North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
We could kind of see if one of these ballistic missiles does actually come down upon U.S. territory.
Mm-hmm. And China has said that if North Korea launches a missile on a trajectory that threatens the United States, then they will stay neutral.
Really?
Yes.
So...
And I think the Atlantic is wrong in thinking that at least Trump himself, I don't think is actually going for a preventive war. I know that the generals surrounding him perhaps are eager to do that.
Yeah. Well, I
think Trump is really putting pressure on China. Really wants China to take care of this problem.
Yeah,
and how China takes care of it, I think, is up to China.
True.
And maybe military action is necessary.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe military, and I know that China has been strengthening its military forces along the border, and it's sort of doing it in a way that makes us think that they're anticipating refugees, and so they want to be able to control that flow. But maybe that's not the reason. Maybe they have other options in mind.
Are the South Koreans ready to fight with America on this?
It's a good question. I'm not going to answer that. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back.
Enigmatic Tim.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Hi there, folks. And look at what I've got here today. My God, take a look at this. This is a BFR in 454 Casull with an octagonal barrel, magna porting, micarta grips. And look at that, it even has my initials on it, JM. Look at that thing of beauty, my God. Pop open the cartridge insertion door, and look at that cylinder spin. The finest revolvers in the world. That's a cannon. That's a cannon. Oh, man. Pretty accurate, though. Pretty much on target. Boy. Massive recall.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, December 9th, 2017. Tim Elder and Ted O'Grady here for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung-jin-moon. And this segment, I want to go into the headlines. We're going to go down the headlines on the Breitbart this morning. And, of course, Breitbart is very much all in for Roger Moore. Is it Roy Moore?
Roy Moore.
Roy Moore. I'm sorry, Roy Moore. Yes, Roy Moore is correct. The election is Tuesday, coming in but just a few days. And Breitbart, of course, is being run by Steve Bannon. He's the chairman or the executive chairman, I think. And so many of their articles are related to that upcoming Alabama Senate race that's going to go to the polls on Tuesday. So exclusive handwriting expert touted by Washington Post turns on Gloria Allred, calls for activist attorney to release yearbook. If you're not following this election, you have no idea what that's about.
Right.
But what happened was that the person who, one of the people who alleged that Roy Moore sexually harassed her or abused her many years ago, 40 years ago, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Signed her yearbook or something like that. And then this person gave that to Gloria Allred, who, of course, is famous on cable TV as a lawyer who appears there a lot. And so she made a big thing of this, but then the handwriting expert said, or no, I guess now the woman who was the alleged victim is saying has admitted that she wrote at least part of that inscription in the yearbook.
It was supposed to be Roy Moore that had written it.
Right. And the handwriting expert says, well, it was all written by one person. The handwriting can see that it was all written by one person, not two people. So anyway, this is...
So she wrote the whole thing.
So, I guess so. So anyway, because if you're not following this, some of the Breitbart, because Breitbart is completely all in on that election.
Yeah.
Roy Moore press conference, cease and desist letter sent to TV stations over patently false ad. New poll says Roy Moore is up 7 points over Jones in the Alabama Senate race. Jones, of course, being Doug Jones, the Democratic candidate. Trump says get out and vote for Roy Moore. Doug Jones is puppet for Chuck and Nancy. All right, so here, Ted, you were watching
I was.
President Trump's speech in Tallahassee, was it?
Pensacola.
I'm sorry. Pensacola, Florida, last night. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, okay. It was Trump being Trump. It was really just like watching a campaign speech. It was thousands and thousands of people. And it was like a political rally. And Donald Trump just went back to his roots. He went back and reiterated his agenda. He was 100% Donald Trump. He, inspired the crowd. He connected with the crowd. There were chants of USA, USA, USA. Lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. The same thing. It was beautiful, and also strategically speaking, I think later on in the speech, he spoke for about an hour or so actually. And
it's a long speech.
He spoke about policy. He spoke about the accomplishments of the Trump presidency in 10 months only, what they've actually done. Also, of course, he pointed out, blacks for Trump. I love you guys. So, he was great. But at the sort of toward the end of the speech, he overtly supported Roy Moore. And he also asked, are there Alabamans here? Of course, Pensacola is right in the panhandle, I think, of Florida. It's very close to Alabama. So that was his opportunity, really, to strongly endorse Roy Moore, and in the context of we can't lose a vote.
Yes.
In in the Senate or House. We can't lose a vote.
In the Senate, yes.
After he had gone through, explaining the accomplishments of his presidency and reiterated, we're going to build the wall, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, his entire agenda, pump the crowd up, and then endorse Roy Moore. We need him. We can't lose a seat. We've got to get our agenda. We got to make America strong again. We got to make America safe again. Our rights don't come from government; they come from God.
Good.
We're all one. We're all one family under God, and we need Roy Moore to be elected to help our agenda go through. So that was the context of his support for Roy Moore. But
So this is going to be very interesting because it looks like it's very possible that Roy Moore is going to win this election. One reason I say that is because people who like Roy Moore, such as Breitbart, are saying that he's always 7 to 8 points ahead. People who don't like him are saying that the race is close. They're not saying he's going to lose, that he's 7 or 8 points down. They say the race is close. So that tells me that probably he's actually about 3 or 4 points ahead. So it looks like he may very well win. And if he wins, what the Democrats have prepared, I guess they prepared for that possibility, because Al Franken has resigned, or has said he will resign. He hasn't resigned. He said he will resign in a few weeks.
Oh, okay.
And so
he's waiting.
So he's waiting, I think, and I think to see whether or not the Senate actually seats Roy Moore. As if the Senate will, so I think the Democrats are going to present a kind of a compromise to the Republicans, saying, okay, we'll sacrifice Al Franken if you sacrifice Roy Moore. I think this is coming. This time next week, I think that's what we'll be talking about.
Really,
yes.
That's the same old moral
equivalence.
Inequivalency argument, right?
I mean, Franken, of course, is in his position because there's actual photographic evidence. When this is kind of, all right, this doesn't exist with Roy Moore.
But he's a comedian. He's a comedian, Tim. It's just a joke. Maybe his speech this week was a joke. Maybe he's not going to resign.
Well, if you're going to do that as a comedian, don't run for the Senate. Don't become a senator, all right? Remain a comedian. That would be my take on that. We'll see what happens because, but there is a difference. Al Franken has actual photographic evidence. Roy Moore is denying. And one of his main accusers has now been caught in an act of forgery or false testimony. And I think if we were to take these two cases to court, Al Franken is kind of an open and shut case, whereas Roy Moore would be up to the judgment of the jury. It could go either way. So I don't think there's an equivalence here at all. We'll see. But of course, what the Democrats are really trying to do is to build a situation where they can take down President Donald Trump. That's what they really want. That's the prize that they're really after.
Well, it's kind of familiar, the MO of the Democrats with Trump having those accusers before the election, right? These women that had come out saying that Trump had abused them or been inappropriate with them.
Right.
But it turned out that they were false emails and they were set up. So it all looks very familiar with Roy Moore.
Yes, it does. And I think to more and more Republicans in Alabama, it is looking more and more familiar and more fake. All right, let's continue with the...
oh, by the way, Tim, Trump did call out the fake news last night.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Yeah, because CNN...
It was fake news with those guys back there. Those guys back there.
CNN actually blew another story. Fake news again. CNN issues corrections over Trump WikiLeaks email story. Touts rejection of UN plan to force a mass third world immigration. ABC should have fired fraudster Brian Ross. Facebook issues fake news alert on 100% factual Breitbart story about forged hoax yearbook. See now, so the fake news alert was fake.
Oh, really?
The fake news alert.
Okay.
It's getting confusing, folks.
It's okay.
Chinese company sues Venezuela over failure to pay debt. That's interesting because until now, China has been very much supporting Venezuela. Everybody else has been saying, oh, no, Venezuela is not going to be able to pay its debt. It's going to go bankrupt. But China's been saying, oh, no, don't worry. They've got things under control.
They want the oil.
China has lent a lot of money or invested a lot of money both ways in Venezuela, and they're getting repaid in oil, except for apparently this company, I guess not. Al-Qaeda in Kashmir urges Indian Muslims to target Hindus. Jihad is life.
Because they have that border between Pakistan and India there.
Well, Indian Muslims. There are a lot of Muslims in India. In fact, India, I think, is one of the top 10. Has one of the top 10 Muslim populations in the world.
You know that's a nuclearized border, right? The Khyber Pass.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons. Never Trumper. The American Bar Association should launch ethics investigation into Gloria Allred. Jesuit university students question Catholic schools' emphasis on Christmas.
Jesuits.
What
about those darn Jesuits, eh?
Democratic Representative Trump never missed an opportunity to fan the flames of racial hatred. And NAAC president says Trump's attendance of Civil Rights Museum opening is an affront. This is a museum that is opening or has opened in Washington. Holmes Norton, the last thing John Lewis should do is to honor the president. Exclusive, Jackie Mason on Gloria Allred. She makes Hillary Clinton sound honest. That's pretty hard. Shashkevili arrest in Ukraine again after dramatic escape.
Who is that?
Shashkevili, he's a gentleman who was actually part of the. He was let's look at this. No. He was. He was a former. Let's look at this. Ex-Georgian president. He's a former president of Georgia. Yeah, okay. And they tried to arrest him, and then, but the crowd prevented the police from arresting him. But then, more recently, then he was arrested. Mikhail Shashkevili, the pro-West, stridently anti-Putin former president of Georgia, was reportedly arrested in Kiev, Ukraine on late Friday, days after a crowd of supporters freed him from police custody by force. Shashkevili is facing charges of alleged collusion with the Russian government, charges he denies, citing his career-long opposition to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Ukrainian government, which granted Shashkevili citizenship in 2015 in order to appoint him a governor of Odessa, charged him with taking money from pro-Russia organized crime groups days after Shashkevili crime called for a nationwide anti-corruption march against President Petro Poroshenko. Maybe that wasn't such a good idea.
He was colluding with the RNC.
I guess.
Some more Russian collusion going on there.
I know, Russians are pretty busy, aren't they?
They're very busy. What's up with all this collusion of the Russians? I mean, aren't they busy enough with their own problems over there, it would seem to me?
It would seem so.
You know, they got a big, huge country over there, and, you know, they're moving in some ways in the right direction, Tim. Restoring Christianity, restoring sovereignty. Not that much time for collusion with I
don't know. They seem to be colluding everybody. Arabs' rage over Jerusalem is Islamic theater. That sounds right. There's been a lot of rage going on, but yeah.
Well, that day of rage, what happened? That was a couple of days ago, right?
It was supposed to happen after prayers on Friday, so it's supposed to happen yesterday. Let's see what's going on here. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is insisting that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the state of Palestine, after President Donald Trump recognized the city as the capital of Israel. No Palestinian state has ever existed, but Abbas is leveraging the claim that Jerusalem is its third holiest city of Islam after Mecca and Medina. Moreover, Jerusalem and the Temple Mount are less important in Islam than they are important in Muslims' anti-Semitic hatred of Israel. Muhammad's famous night journey, Isra and Miraj, is the basis of the Islamic claim to Jerusalem as an Islamic holy city. Yet this journey is never mentioned in the Quran, and neither is Jerusalem. The first verse of Surah 17 says that Allah took Muhammad from the sacred mosque in Mecca to the farthest Al-Aqsa mosque. There is no mosque in Jerusalem at this time, if the traditional chronology regarding the Quran is to be believed. So the farthest mosque probably wasn't really the one that now bears that name in Jerusalem. Islamic tradition, however, is firm that this mosque is in Jerusalem. According to Islamic tradition, Muhammad described the vision as beginning when the angel Gabriel came and stirred me with his foot. Soon, a white animal, which was smaller than a mule and bigger than a donkey, was brought to me. This was the Burak, which Muhammad further described as half mule, half donkey, with wings on its sides with which it propelled its feet. Barak carried Muhammad to the Temple Mount, and from there Muhammad was taken into heaven itself, where he encountered the other prophets and was given by Allah himself the order that Muslims should pray 5 times daily. Later, Muhammad seems to have retreated from the claim that this was a bodily journey. His wife Aisha explained, the apostle's body remained where it was, but God removed his spirit by night.
That sounds more realistic.
This fantastic legend, which was first distributed in the late 8th century, over 150 years after the traditional date for the death of Muhammad, is the entire basis for the Islamic claim to Jerusalem. It was never an important city in Islam until one man decided to make it so as a response to Zionism. That man was the Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who lived in Berlin during World War II and recruited Muslims to serve as soldiers for the Nazis. He also made broadcasts in Arabic to Muslim countries in which he quoted the Quran's anti-Semitic passages to justify Nazi persecution of the Jews. After the war, the Mufti raised money throughout the Islamic world to finance the refurbishing of the Dome of the Rock that dominates the Jerusalem skyline, plating the dome with gold. And he worked assiduously to compel Muslims to exaggerate the importance of Jerusalem to Islam to provide a counter-movement to Zionism. How well he succeeded can be seen in the outrage over Trump's announcement. But like so much Palestinian outrage, it is not based on fact, but on propaganda. The Palestinians claim an ethnicity and nationality that has no basis in history, but which was concocted by Yasser Arafat and the KGB as a weapon to use against Israel, have a capital as fictional as they are. But the rage they show as a result of Trump's announcement will, unfortunately, be real.
But you know, this thing, Tim, this is an awesome thing that Trump did.
Yes.
I mean, just on the internal level, the spiritual level, the restoration of the bloodline of God.
Yes.
Of Israel. I mean, this affects us directly.
Yes, it
the
is.
Sanctuary Church. I mean, to me, this is such a providential thing that Trump, as President of the United States, has declared that the capital of Jerusalem is where the U.S. Embassy will be. So the full recognition of Jerusalem as the temple, the place of God's temple, the place where the Christ came, the place that represents Christ.
Yes.
The entire bloodline of Judeo-Christianity is symbolized right there and in physical substance. So to me, again, Tim, it's just another example of the turning point in history that we're at right now.
Yes.
And again, we in the sanctuary, I mean, we're the micro level. What we do here, the way we attend the Second King, our internal attitude, the way we're able to give of ourselves in an unconditional manner, to make these internal conditions is accelerating these events that are going out to the macro now.
Yes. Again, the king liberated the victims of jihad, and that was a spiritual blow against Islam. And now Trump has dealt this physical blow against Islam. It is a blow against Islam. It is a huge, it's just a recognition of reality, just a popping a bubble that a lot of people believe. But it is, that's all it takes. That's all it takes. You just have to pop the bubble.
My father was so clear also about the 3 monotheistic religions being unified, is that the U.S. and Israel,
but around the Messiah.
Exactly. So
we're unified
so
around
in this way,
Messiah.
Islam is being judged. Islam is being judged for this, and Islam, which is based upon the 2 bloodlines coming out of Abraham's seed.
A few more headlines here. More fake news. Washington Post document expert said hoax yearbook consistent with one writer. Bezos' anti-Moore paper humiliated. Jerry Sandusky's son sentenced to prison on sex abuse charges. Angels nab coveted Japanese star Ohtani. That's a baseball story. Vaughn happy to mix sport and politics ahead of the Olympics. She said she's going to the Olympics. She's going to represent
Vaughn. Sarah Vaughn.
Yeah.
She's a singer, isn't she?
Yeah.
Is she going to sing the national anthem at the Olympics?
People don't sing national anthems at the Olympics now.
They play the national anthems.
Yeah, they have. Lindsey Vaughn says she won't stop expressing her political views, though her main goal is to regaining her Olympic downhill title. So she's a skier.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see here. Female wrestlers wear body-covering costumes for a match in Abu Dhabi. Report: Never Trump ex-Jeb staffer admits planting anti-Moore story in WAPO. So, we still have a lot of Moore stories. And here we go. Kurt Bardella to America. I'm a Democrat now. America to Kurt Bardella. Who the hell is Kurt Bardella?
Do you know who he is?
I have no idea. Franken accuser, his statement wasn't apology. Aniston, McCarthy, climate denial is like not believing in gravity.
Okay.
Seth Rogen backs out of Sirius XM interviews because triggered by Bannon. Rose McGowan versus Meryl Streep on Weinstein. Fake news campaign. Americans falsely think their taxes will rise with GOP plan. I think there's a lot of confusion about and it's understandable that there's confusion about the tax plan.
Yeah.
For example, I read one Reuters, which should know better, article saying that a lot of Americans will no longer be able to deduct the interest, the mortgage interest.
Okay.
Well, the reason they won't be able to deduct mortgage interest is because the standard deduction is going up.
Gone way up.
So it's almost doubling. So and that standard deduction is going to be higher than what their mortgage interest deduction would be.
Right.
And also their donations to charity, such as donations to church.
Yeah.
It's going to be $12,000, or according to, I think, what they have right now, $12,000 for an individual and $24,000 for a couple. $24,000 standard deduction, if you're filing jointly, covers a lot of deductions, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know how much people are paying in mortgage interest these days, but let's say you're paying even $1,000 a month. That's $12,000. Let's say you make, $50,000 a year. You're donating, 10%, $5,000 to your church. That's still $17,000. All right. So that's still less than the standard deduction of $24,000. So this thing that the Democrats are saying, oh no, you won't be able to deduct your mortgage interest. You won't be able to deduct your donations to your church. It's misleading.
Yeah.
And it's purposely confusing people. And I read that in a Reuters article, and I was surprised because Reuters is supposed to know better. And maybe they're doing it on purpose. Maybe I had to think that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're doing it on purpose.
You know, one thing comes to mind about this, too.
Yes.
Actually, again, with Trump, the blue-collar billionaire. Because if you're self-employed and you have to itemize deductions, you have all that paperwork, and you've got to hire an accountant and all that. But all these guys, like
keep all these receipts,
electricians, plumbers, people that are working, they don't want to deal with their taxes. We have the standard deduction. That's great. It's more than what I would itemize anyway.
Right.
Great, that's done. I can go back to work.
Sure, yeah.
And so, Trump's all about, we're going to work. He was talking about West Virginia last night. West Virginia, the state, is second on the list in economic growth in the last 10 months.
Wow.
Because of the mining. And he's talking about last night, we have 1,000 years worth of coal in the ground here in Pennsylvania. He's saying Vietnam is importing coal from the U.S. and saying this is the finest coal in the world that we have. So there's all these things happening, and this is just another example of Trump under the radar, telling the working man, "Hey, I'm on your side. We're in this together. Get to work."
Yes. And next hour we're going to get into some economics, because anyway we'll do that after the break. We're going to get into some economic stuff. Nikki Haley, open question: if USA is in 2018 Olympics? See, this is what I was saying. What if the U.S. decides not to send a team to the? I don't know who would do it. I don't know if the president has that authority. It's a private organization, so maybe he doesn't. But let's just look at this before we go to break. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has noted that it has not been decided if U.S. athletes will participate in the 2018 Winter Games in Pyeongchang, South Korea, as U.S. relations with North Korea continue to sour. Ambassador Haley told Fox News that it is still an open question whether American athletes will take part in the Games, USA Today reported. I think those are conversations we are going to have. But what have we always said? We don't ever fear anything. We live our lives, Haley said, and certainly that is a perfect opportunity for all of them to go and to do something they have worked so hard for. What we will do is make sure that we are taking every precaution possible to make sure that they are safe, the ambassador added. Despite her statements, U.S. Olympic officials did not substantiate Haley's position. We have not had any discussions, either internally or with our government partners, about the possibility of not taking teams to the 2018 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. We are planning on supporting 2 full delegations in Pyeongchang, USOC spokesperson Mark Jones said on Friday. The U.S. Olympics Committee has also noted that it has remained focused on its preparations to compete next year in South Korea. I say next year, but actually it's just
3 months.
2 months.
2 months.
2 months away.
Wow.
2 months.
It's very close.
France has also professed its worries over the safety of athletes as North Korea continues to ramp up its belligerent behavior. In September, Olympic officials from France said they may refrain from joining the Games in South Korea if the safety of their citizens could not be guaranteed against attacks by Kim Jong-un's oppressive regime. Still, the International Olympic Committee has claimed that there are no security concerns. No.
Not at all.
No security concerns for next year's Games.
Nothing to see here.
Christoph Dubby, the executive director of the Olympic Games, recently noted that he has seen full support from the United Nations. Oh yeah, what have we got to worry about? We got full support from the United Nations for the 2018 Games. Dubby also insisted that there is a very positive message coming out of the assembly. Yeah, right. Okay. Good luck with that. All right,
peace in our time, Tim.
Peace in our time. No, peace in 2 months.
That's right.
What have we got to worry about? All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back with some economic news after this.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name. When we love, the least of this. When
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, December 9th, 2017. Tim Elder and Ted O'Grady here for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jin-moon. And I want to do some talk about some economics this time because, we keep talking about how, people talk about how bubble coming, crash coming, fiat currency collapsing, all the kinds of things like that. And yesterday, what happens on the first Friday of every month? This happens on the first Friday of every month. I think at a particular time, I think maybe 8:30 in the morning, the Labor Department announces statistics about the labor market in the previous month. And so yesterday was that first Friday, and so the Labor Department announced the statistics for what was happening in November for the previous month, and it was pretty good news. And I wanted to look at some of the articles about that. New York Times, the headline says, "After 7 years of job growth, room for more or danger ahead?" Of course, this is always the question. Human beings tend to assume that something that's going up will continue to go up forever.
Right.
And they also assume that when it's going down, it's going to continue going down forever. Oh, no, we're all going to die.
Isn't there some truth to that with the law of momentum?
Well, there is, but at some point, though, things do turn around.
Right.
They always do turn around. What goes up comes down. What goes down usually comes up. Some companies go
It's psychological, though. I mean, Trump
it is
was talking about
psychological.
this last night. He's saying it's psychological, and Trump was quite adamant that there's a lot more on the upside.
Well, it partly depends on what comes out in the tax reform bill. All right. So anyway, let's look at the New York Times and ding, 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 New York Times. All right. So be alert for that. The economy's vital signs are stronger than they have been in years. Companies are posting jobs faster than they can find workers to fill them. Incomes are rising. The stock market sets records seemingly every month. The latest evidence of the revival came Friday when the Labor Department reported that American employers added 228,000 jobs in November. And that, by the way, was higher that was more than what the economists had expected.
Apparently 86 new records of the stock markets in the past 10 months.
Yeah.
And Trump's 401k is up 39%.
The unemployment rate stayed steady at 4.1%, the lowest since 2000. In other words, 17 years ago. Job growth has slowed since its peak in 2014, but remains remarkably steady. For the first time on record, employers have added jobs every month for more than 7 years, 86 months to be precise. It's really, really strong. It's a really, really strong economy, said Tom Gimbel, a chief executive of LaSalle Network, a staffing firm in Chicago. Companies really want to take advantage of the economy, so they want to hire and get while the getting's good. That strength could also pose challenges, particularly in light of the $1.5 trillion tax cut that Congress could pass as early as this month. Economists expect the tax bill to provide at least a modest lift to the economy, but they are not so sure that's a good idea. Now, remember when Trump first came into office and he put out a budget plan for the next few years, and he assumed in that plan that there would be 4%, I think, growth or something like that around that way. Yeah. And the economists, the Democratic economists, were livid. They were angry. They weren't just mocking it. They were angry. They called it irresponsible. They said that we've already proven that the American economy cannot even grow 3%. That's been proven. Because we know that. How do we know that? Because Obama couldn't do it.
All right.
And if Obama, the God, can't do it, nobody can do it. I mean, they were really angry. They were actually emotional about it.
They do tend to get a bit emotional.
Yes.
Liberals, libtards, as we say.
And now...
not quite rational.
Yes. Now they're saying, stimulating the economy now is a bad idea because it's going to create a boom-bust cycle. You'll see here in a minute.
Okay.
And anyway, I'll save that comment for later.
Okay.
With unemployment so low and the economy fundamentally healthy, a tax cut could lead the economy to grow too quickly, pushing up inflation and forcing the Federal Reserve to raise rates faster than planned. See, this is the thing. They don't want people to get rich. That's one thing.
Right.
They see people getting rich and say, wait, we got to put a stop to this. What's going on here? Whoa, call the police. Turn down the music.
Wouldn't you like to have a bit of that action, Tim?
Turn down the music. And this whole thing about, you know, when the economy gets going, that the Federal Reserve should raise rates. This is what they do, and this is kind of a standard, you know. This is what's taught in Economics 101.
Keynesian monetary policy, right?
Well, this is what's taught in Economics 101, that this is the whole purpose of the Federal Reserve Board. That you know, if you leave the economy to do what it wants, then it will have these huge boom bust cycles, and so. And they give an example of the Great Depression as being one of the big busts, and you want to prevent that. And so the Federal Reserve tries to smooth out that cycle. But that really needs to be called into question.
Yes.
Why not let free market operate? All right. Why not let free market operate? All right. So right now, the economy is going great. So more people companies are hiring, right? More people are hiring. So in this kind of a situation, more companies want to invest. So more companies are going to want to borrow money. The demand for capital goes up.
That's right.
So with the demand for capital going up, naturally, supply and demand, the price of capital goes up. The price of capital is up, because whenever demand exceeds supply, the price is going to go up. This is, you know, all right. We know this. Lemonade stand. If you had a lemonade stand, you know this. All right. You can anyway. So the price of capital is represented by the interest rate.
Right.
So as more companies want to invest and more companies are borrowing, the interest rates will naturally go up.
They rise.
Yes.
And it should be self-regulating.
Should be self-regulating. They say, oh, the Great Depression. But the Great Depression was actually made worse by the actions of the Federal Reserve Board.
Why? You know why it's the Great Depression? Because the people buying stock on 10% margin.
Right.
So it was a speculation on the stock market that created the panic. So,
and when it started, the Federal Reserve did the opposite of what they should do, and actually it was their actions that made it much deeper and longer than it would have been. Anyway.
That was a key point, because at the moment, as I understand it, to buy stock on margin, you have to have 50% capital now.
They keep changing it. I'm not sure what it is now. It's a very poorly timed fiscal stimulus, said Joseph Song, an economist at Bank of America. It kind of raises the risk of a boom-bust cycle. But these were the same people who were saying, no, we must not have a 4% economic growth earlier this year. For now, however, the figures present a political opportunity for President Trump, who ran for office on a promise to revive the American economy. Economists almost universally say Mr. Trump has had little to do with the rebound, which began long before he was elected and has not accelerated meaningfully since he took office. But with unemployment low and wages beginning to creep upward, voters may be more inclined to give credit.
Who said that?
Economists almost universally.
Economists, almost universally.
Yes.
These Democratic economists you were talking about in the beginning.
Yes. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, said on Friday that the jobs report was evidence that President Trump's bold economic vision continues to pay off. And here, I'm thinking the tech team is showing you the graph of the unemployment rate, where it was rising. It rose quite a bit, 08, 09, and it looks like around 2010, at beginning of 2010, it kind of peaked, or 2011, it kind of peaked, and it's been coming down since then. And it's continued to come down after President Trump took office. Wherever the credit lies, workers are benefiting from an economy that is delivering broad-based gains in income and employment for the first time in at least a decade. Groups that were left behind in the early stages of the economic recovery, such as African Americans and people without a college degree, have seen their unemployment rates drop sharply in recent years. And although wage growth remains disappointing, household income, which reflects not only hourly pay rates but also how many people have jobs and how many hours they are working, has shown strong gains, particularly for poor households. Companies in nearly every sector are reveling in the best opportunities they have seen in years. Improving global growth is giving a lift to manufacturers, which have added jobs for 4 straight months. Rising incomes and strong consumer confidence helped retailers, whose payrolls grew at the fastest pace since January, despite the shadow of rising online sales. Even the fall hurricanes, which led to a short-lived slowdown in hiring in September, are now helping employment as Texas and Florida rebuild. The construction sector added 24,000 jobs in November. So far as the business climate, maybe it's not quite the best ever, but it's pretty close to the best ever, said Mike Boland, chief executive of McCarthy Building Companies, a commercial construction company with offices around the country. Typically, we'll have one region that's really hot and one region that's really slow, and right now all 5 regions are just cooking, he added. Everything is busy. Business could get even busier soon. The Republican tax plan aims to encourage business investment by cutting corporate taxes, which could increase demand for the big projects, hospitals, airports, office buildings that make up a big part of McCarthy's business. In fact, Mr. Boland said many clients are already making plans on the assumption that the legislation will pass. A lot of people are making decisions this year assuming that it's going to happen, Mr. Boland said. If it doesn't happen, I think you'll see some people pull back. Yeah. The challenge for McCarthy, as for other builders, is finding the workers for their projects. A couple of years ago, Mr. Boland said job seekers would line up outside the gates of construction sites hoping for a chance to work. Today, McCarthy is having so much trouble finding qualified workers that it is building a 10-acre training center outside of Houston and hiring staff members to teach construction skills.
Awesome, man. So the other two points Trump was saying last night about rebuilding the infrastructure, right? He's making the point that since the Iraq War, the first Iraq War, we've spent $7 trillion in the Middle East, $7 trillion, not billion. And that with that amount of money, we could have rebuilt the entire infrastructure of America 3 times. Three times.
Wow.
The other point he said last night is that, by the way, African-American home ownership in the U.S. right now is the highest ever. And jobs, manufacturing jobs in particular, are increasing by the hundreds of thousands, and that in the job market now, like you just said, not only will you get a job, you will have your choice of 5 jobs. And so it puts the worker in a negotiating position to get the job he loves. So Trump's really big about loving your work. You know, get up in the morning, love what you do. Do you get up in the morning, love what you do, Tim?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we're right in there. We're doing what we love to do. And this is the spirit of the age, Tim.
Yes.
This is Trump's America. This is the world moving to a Chonoguk.
Yes, there you go. It's a really big deal now, probably a bigger deal than I've ever seen it, and I don't see it getting better. Mr. Boland said, we're spending a lot of money and effort trying to train up the unskilled portion of our workforce. The question vexing many economists, the guys who said in the United States will never grow at 3%, is why, if labor is as scarce as Mr. Boland and other executives claim, workers are not seeing bigger increases in their paychecks. McCarthy has raised pay, especially for people with specialized skill, but overall wage growth remains restrained. Average hourly earnings were up 2.5% in November from a year earlier, only a bit faster than the rate of inflation. It's still just creeping higher, said Brett Ryan, an economist at Deutsche Bank in New York. Wage growth is just not taking off the way we've seen in the past. The picture could change. Other measures of earnings, for example, show faster growth. And according to an analysis by Ian Shepherdson, chief economist for the forecasting firm Pantheon Macroeconomics, wages are rising faster in regions where the unemployment rate is lowest. That suggests that pay growth could accelerate if the unemployment rate continues to fall in 2018, as Mr. Shepherdson expects. Companies are feeling more pressure to raise pay. For the first time in 6 years, chief executives surveyed by Business Roundtable, a coalition of big corporations, reported that labor expenses were their biggest cost pressure in the fourth quarter. Catherine Barrera, chief economist of the online job site ZipRecruiter, said wages would pick up when workers gain the confidence in the economy to demand raises and to change jobs if they do not get them. There are signs that could be happening. Nearly 9.5 million workers quit their jobs voluntarily in the third quarter, the most since 2001. If people are feeling really confident and comfortable with the labor market, they're going to be more likely to seek that next opportunity, Ms. Barrera said. When we see that type of confidence, that's when wages will grow. Rising pay would be good news for workers, but it could cause concern at the Federal Reserve, where policymakers have been gradually raising rates and the paring and paring the Fed's bond holdings in a bid to in a bid to keep inflation in check. The Fed is all but certain to raise interest rates at its meeting next week, and has signaled plans to do so 3 times next year as well. But if inflation starts to pick up, the Fed could be forced to act more quickly than it wants, with unpredictable effects on the financial markets and the economy. So this is what many people have been saying from the beginning, that, yeah, the economy is going great guns now, but the Federal Reserve is setting Trump up for a big fall, that they're going to raise rates so as to purposely tank the economy, to sacrifice the economy, just as they're sacrificing Al Franken. You know, they'll sacrifice anything they have to. The plan right now is to raise interest rates this month in December, and then again 3 times next year. They're threatening actually to raise it even further if Trump doesn't do what they want.
So that is the problem with the Federal Reserve. It's a problem with having central banks.
Yes, it is.
On top of the economy. I mean,
that's why Chinese Constitution outlaws a central bank.
I mean, if there were no Federal Reserve, this economy would self-regulate. You look around here, all these small banks. You know, normally banking is based on a local economy and based on mortgages primarily. And so the local economy is going to regulate those interest rates. It's very artificial for a central bank to just manipulate the economy through ticking up and down interest rates.
You could be looking at a combination in the summer of stronger growth, unemployment at 3.5% and still falling, and wage growth picking up as well. Mr. Shepard said that requires a fairly substantial adjustment to markets. Well, these people who think they're smart, who think they're smarter than the market, are seeing things going well, and they don't want it. They don't like that. They don't like that. And so they're trying to think of ways to mess it up. Mess it up.
What is the psychology of not liking it, Tim? What is the psychology going on in America now?
Well, the psychology of not liking it is that it's giving people more power, more ability to resist central control.
Are they just so addicted to central control? Is this like a power trip for these guys?
Yes, and they think that they are the new aristocracy.
Oh, I see, okay.
The new aristocracy. So, and that America needs an aristocracy.
So they're sort of living in this...
That the founding fathers were wrong. That the Americans cannot govern themselves. That the free market is wrong.
There we are. So we're talking about the sociopathic
and besides,
class.
They need a job.
Well, I mean, you think they have enough money by now they could go stay on an island somewhere. They probably have their bunkers built and ready to go.
Probably
just go out there.
Probably so, yes. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back with more news after this.
Boy, wasn't that fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially, it's just absolutely gorgeous.
All polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1 million.
Yeah, Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah, just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, you know, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah, Model 27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run, under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right. 341.
I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about what, 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum, but it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So
that sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Tim Elder and Ted O'Grady here for the Second King of Cheongguk as we go through the news in this Saturday, December 9th of 2017 edition of the King's Report. Some people will do anything to get attention.
Yeah.
And, of course, the existence of the Internet makes that problem just all the more worse.
A lot of show-offs out there.
We shouldn't laugh about other people's misfortunes,
Okay.
but we can make exceptions. Sometimes you need to laugh, and I think God creates people like this to help us get through the day with a laugh. So let's laugh, all right? YouTube prankster thankful after rescue from microwave stunt. Some may call Jay Swingler a blockhead, but at least he's a grateful blockhead.
Okay.
The British YouTuber
Is he British? Okay.
recently made headlines after a prank in which he tried cementing his head in a microwave oven. Went horribly wrong. What was he expecting?
I have no idea.
He responded to the mishap in a video on Friday. "You don't know how grateful I am. I was so scared," Swingler 22 said after firefighters rescued him. "You guys, the fire department, are awesome at your job, and so are the paramedics. I appreciate you guys a lot," he added in his TGF Bro YouTube channel post. Swingler's plan to cement his head in the microwave using spackling paste took an unexpectedly bad turn when the substance solidified faster than he anticipated.
So he was going to pull his head out of there before it solidified. That was the idea.
The plan was literally to set my head in there, but not let it set complete. And at one point, it was like a thick jelly, and I could keep it on my head, and I could move the microwave standing up, he said. But if I really wanted to, I could pull it off, and it would slide off. Cause the spackling paste was kind of like a thick jelly around my head. That would sound a lot better in a British accent.
What part of Britain was he from? So curiosity.
I'm not sure.
He sounds like a
here.
public school boy with too much time on his hands. Or maybe want to post something to his friends. Or maybe he wanted to look like a robot. I guess he was standing up with this microwave on his head.
Well, let's see here. In the video posted Thursday, Swingler is seen covering his head with a plastic bag and using a tube to breathe before sticking his head into a microwave. He really put a lot of planning into this.
Definitely.
Sticking his head into a microwave oven
Brits pay attention to detail, you know?
filled with the paste. His friend then uses a hairdryer to speed the paste hardening process.
There's the problem.
But Swingler's breathing is cut off when he stands up, with the microwave attached to his head after the paste has solidified. His friends are able to chisel away at the plaster just enough to provide some space for him to breathe until help arrives. "I was panicking, and I was telling them I'm about to die," Swingler says in the video. Swingler said he's never appreciated life so much. After the fire department spent about an hour chiseling and hammering away at the hardened paste to free his head from the kitchen appliance. To some, it may have seemed like a funny scenario. But the first responders were not amused.
Yeah.
All the group involved were very apologetic, but this was clearly a call-out which might have prevented us from helping someone else in genuine accidental need, said Watch Commander Sean Dakin, officer in charge of the West Midlands. There you go. West Midlands.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought.
Really? Why?
A lot of them don't have jobs and they're bored up there.
I see.
You know the West Midlands, like Birmingham around there? Manchester?
I have no idea about
So
British
there's a
geography.
north-south divide, and most of the big money is down south. But anyway,
So West Midlands is what, northwest below Scotland?
Yeah, it's midway up. There's Birmingham, which is the origin of the Industrial Revolution in Manchester. Mm-hmm. So there were the cotton mills and all that, and industry. So, but they've suffered since before Maggie Thatcher came in. Mm-hmm. So they're just now waking up. And I actually worked for a company from the West Midlands up in Stoke-on-Trent. But they're very, how can I say, British people, they get a lot going on in their head. Especially young kids.
This guy didn't.
They tend to think eclectically. What can I do? How can I fill this empty time that I have?
This guy did not have a lot going on in his head. Anyway, that quote was from the Watch Commander, officer in charge of the West Midlands Fire Service crew who responded. USA Today reported. However, looking back at the whole escapade, Swingler said it's a story that people are going to remember. I doubt it. I had a damn microwave stuck to my head. Do you know how many people are going to remember that? Not as many as you think, I think. In comparison to, do you know how many people are going to remember that news article that said, man stole toy from Chop gets a fine? He said. The YouTuber star also addressed the backlash on social media in which people called him anything from an idiot to a waste of emergency service time. Literally 100%. I should be fined, and I'm expecting a fine, Swingler said. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but I'm expecting a fine, and I'm more than happy to pay it, and I'm more than happy to donate my money to the people that helped me that day. As of late Friday, the video of Swingler getting his head stuck in a microwave has been viewed nearly 2 million times.
Hey, you can monetize this now. You solved this problem.
2 million times.
All he has to do is manufacture this, a breathing straw for,
Ted, this is what we need to do to increase viewership of the King's Report.
Yeah.
All right, somebody go get a microwave.
You want me to do it?
No, that's all right. I'm just kidding. I'm sure there are other ways. But everyone watching can share this, all right? That would be a much better way than Ted and I sticking our head in a microwave and cementing.
I don't know, Tim. Maybe we should give it a go. The have-a-go culture, You know the term have a go.
Have a go?
British say have a go, yeah. Something comes up, you have a go.
Usually
they say when a guy challenges a robber or a thief, with a improvised weapon. Because, in Britain, no one carries, there's no concealed carry in Britain. So you got to have a go, Tim, to make something happen.
Got to make something. If nothing's happening, it would. You see, we're living in a place where a lot's happening. A lot is happening.
That's true.
Yes. All right, back to more serious news. More Clinton ties to Mueller team. One deputy attended Clinton party, another repped a top aide. So now Mueller is actually coming under a great deal of scrutiny. Mm-hmm. I won't say investigation, but scrutiny.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a good thing.
Yes.
Senator Nunes, isn't he? Key figure in this?
One of them, yes.
Yeah.
More Clinton connections have emerged for members of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigative team. I mean, is this a surprise? Mm-hmm. I mean, we knew this from the beginning. Yeah. Amid growing Republican complaints about potential bias inside the office created to lead an independent probe. Mm-hmm. On Friday, the Wall Street Journal reported that Mueller investigator Andrew Weissman, a former partner at WilmerHale, attended Hillary Clinton's election night party last November at the Javits Center in New York City. Mm-hmm. Fox News reported earlier this week that Weissman in January also praised outgoing acting Attorney General Sally Yates after she was fired for refusing to defend President Trump's travel ban. Meanwhile, at least two Mueller investigators' past legal work for Clinton-tied figures is getting a second look as Republicans hunt for signs of bias. Aaron Zebley, another former partner at WilmerHale and a former chief of staff to Mueller when he served as FBI director, represented Justin Cooper, a key figure in the Hillary Clinton email controversy. Cooper is the longtime Bill Clinton aide responsible for helping set up the now infamous private email server, Cooper later admitted to 2 instances where he destroyed Clinton's old mobile devices by breaking them in half or hitting them with a hammer. Janine Rhee, another former partner at WilmerHale, represented ex-Obama National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes, the Clinton Foundation, in a 2015 racketeering case, and Hillary Clinton herself in a lawsuit seeking access to her private emails. You've got Donald Trump being persecuted by Hillary Clinton's fan club. That's inequitable. Representative Matt Gaetz, a Republican Florida member of the House Judiciary Committee, told Fox News on Friday, it's about time. You know, the Republicans in Congress have really been laying off this kind of a thing. It's about time they started attacking the bias in Mueller's. It was obvious from the beginning. Many of the members of Mueller's team donated to the Clinton campaign. We have a lot of highly qualified federal prosecutors in the Justice Department, and we could have found a bunch of them who didn't donate to either candidate, but that didn't occur, and that's troubling. These political donations have been well known since the start of the Mueller probe. Right. At least 7 of Mueller's investigators on the Russia meddling case have donated to Democratic candidates and the Democratic National Committee. Weissman donated a combined $2,300 to the Obama campaign in 2008 and at least $2,000 to the DNC in 2006. Rhee donated a total of $5,400 to Hillary Clinton in 2015 and 2016, and a combined $4,800 to former President Barack Obama in 2008 and 11. Zebley has no history of political donations or any affiliation with a political party. Neither political donations nor past legal work alone proves that an investigator is biased or unable to work a case objectively. But the revelation last weekend that another investigator, Peter Strzok, was removed from the Russia probe over anti-Trump texts has critics looking closely at every bio. Mueller did not have to select attorneys who had made donations to or even represented Democratic candidates, but as those partisan connections are becoming clearer, it gives an appearance of bias that could have been avoided. Former high-ranking, in other words, it could have been hidden. You could have put it under the rug. But former high-ranking Justice Department official James Trusty, who served under the Bush and Obama administrations, told Fox News on Friday, add a lead investigator having 10,000 text affair with an already dubious selection for the team in terms of litigation experience, and you might start seeing a real death spiral in terms of any public support for the investigation, Trustee added in an email to Fox News. That was a reference to Strzok's anti-Trump text messages with another former Mueller investigator, Lisa Page, with whom he was romantically involved. Strzok, who was an FBI counterintelligence agent, was reassigned to the FBI's Human Resources Division after the discovery of the texts. Page was briefly on Mueller's team, but returned to the FBI over the summer. The two exchanged more than 10,000 text messages, Fox News reported. Strzok has been in 10,000. How do you do? I don't know if I would do 10,000 text messages in a lifetime. Anyway, that's...
You got arthritis in your fingers. But I mean, Tim, what the Republicans need, okay?
Yeah.
They need some BJJ training from the king. These rhinos, they need to get their ashtrays kicked.
Yes.
And get some strength.
Amen to that.
I mean, honestly, you know, Trump's a street fighter. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a couple in there that are willing to get into the ring. Mm-hmm. So maybe we're getting there, Tim.
Maybe
Is
so.
anyone stepping forward? I saw one guy on Fox last night. He was a Republican senator, and he was just too, you know, he wasn't there. And Jeff Sessions, you know, he's a bit too polite. Mm-hmm. You know, who's going to step forward? Of course, Rand Paul is now nursing 6 broken ribs. Mm-hmm. Where is the Republican street fighter from the Congress? Mm-hmm. Who's going to step forward? Jeb Bush? Well, of course, no. He's not in Congress anyway. He's not in Congress, and he was low energy. We can't depend on him.
He's Florida.
He's in Florida, but he's not in Congress. Maybe this is Senator Nunes.
Hopefully we'll find someone, because they really need to start getting on this. They need to start getting on this a lot. One story I want to cover, because this really gets my craw, is that there's all this sexual harassment, things like that. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's not yet really attacking Bill Clinton, and that's one thing.
Yeah.
But the other thing that really gets me, Woody Allen. Come on, this guy is the poster boy of sexual harassment. All right.
Yeah.
Come on.
He married his daughter.
He married his daughter. He
right?
married. He was married with Mia Farrow.
Mia Farrow, yeah.
And Mia Farrow adopted
He's a Korean, right?
A Korean American or Korean or something like that. Yeah. And he was carrying on an affair with her. And then when she finally turned 18, he actually divorced Mia Farrow and married the daughter.
So the affair was before she was 18.
Yeah. But now, Dylan Farrow, Woody Allen's accuser, says Me Too movement is selective. So this is another daughter, adopted daughter of Mia Farrow,
Really?
with whom he also had a
inappropriate relationship.
So yeah, and Dylan Farrow, the adopted daughter of Woody Allen, who has alleged that he sexually abused her as a child, questioned in an article published this week why Mr. Allen had escaped the consequences of the widespread social backlash that was set off by the fall of the Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. Ms. Farrow, writing in an opinion piece published in the Los Angeles Times, also alleged that those who worked for Mr. Allen, including people in the movie industry and actors in Mr. Allen's movies, have covered up for him or turned a blind eye. She referred to the Me Too movement, which arose after the allegations against Mr. Weinstein were reported in the New York Times and the New Yorker in October, in which women shared stories of sexual assault and accusation. Let's get through that. So she wrote, I have long maintained that when I was 7 years old, Woody Allen led me into an attic, away from the babysitters who had been instructed never to leave me alone with him. He then sexually assaulted me. I told the truth to the authorities then, and I have been telling it, unaltered, for more than 20 years. Why is it that Harvey Weinstein and other accused celebrities have been cast out by Hollywood, while Allen recently secured a multi-million-dollar distribution deal with Amazon, greenlit by former Amazon Studios executive Roy Price before he was suspended over sexual misconduct allegations? Allen's last feature, Wonder Wheel, was released theatrically on December 1st.
Wow. 7 years old.
7 years old. Ugh. And so why is it, there is a kind of a selective thing here, isn't there?
Yeah.
Some people get caught up in this and some people don't. Bill Clinton, who's protecting him? And Woody Allen. You know how old he is now?
80.
84.
84.
Yes.
Has he got a young girlfriend?
I assume so.
Get trade up. Trade down. I heard Hugh Hefner died recently.
Yes. And if he hadn't, maybe he would be in this. Woody Allen is 82. I'm sorry. Take the difference between you and me. 82 years old.
Okay.
He was born on December 1, 1935. Yeah, it's frustrating to see some people going scot-free on this. Let's look at some of the other Drudge Report headlines. Prominent appeals court judge Alex Kozinski accused of sexual misconduct by former staffers. See, he needs to call up Woody Allen and say, hey, what's the secret?
Yeah, how to skate.
Rage around the world, Jerusalem riots spread, clashes erupt across West Bank, Gaza. Turkey's Erdogan, or is it Erdogan, seeks to lead Muslim response. U.S. warns Saudi Arabia on Middle East actions as ties fray. Palestinian protesters shot dead by Israeli troops. Then Trump Mattis turned military loose on ISIS. We did that. Navy says the sailor staged racist vandalism. Toronto police insist serial killer not behind wave of LGBT disappearances. A rash of sleeping jurors in complex trials.
Sleeping jurors, okay.
Yeah.
Stay awake.
Britain and EU reach 11th hour deal over divorce terms. Farage slams humiliation. More than a quarter of millennials would replace a human lover with a droid.
Right. I mean, that may solve some problems. Like I said last week. If the congressmen get in there, give them the choice of sex bots. They can take care of whatever the needs they have, without involving other people.
With their own money. Venezuela chronic shortages give rise to medical flea markets. Brian Singer's teen ex-lover bears all about life in director's orbit, sex, drugs, glamour, emptiness. I think we've had a number of these bear all articles over the decades, haven't we? Every once in a while, someone wants to bear all. Charlie Sheen sues National Enquirer about Corey Haim's story. Now Dustin Hoffman accuser details horrific groping on Broadway. The war on Christmas parties.
Really?
Yes.
Is there a war on Christmas parties?
Apparently there's a war on Christmas parties. Of course, the Chinese Constitution would outlaw that. No wars on non-state actors.
Right.
The war on Christmas parties, that is. This is the Weekly Standard. If I can get rid of this ad.
You know, this thing with Turkey and Erdogan, just to go back from it, you know, he's a radical president of Turkey, but Turkey, which is a large Muslim population, has been relatively moderate, you know, and that in tandem
Secular,
with,
yes.
yeah, and it's a secular state, it's not an Islamic state at all, and this guy's new, and, you know, the Britain now with this divorce on Brexit, I assume that's finalizing the divorce of Brexit, so that's a good thing. It just reminds me of a few years ago when I was over there, and David Cameron gave this big speech about building a superhighway from London to Ankara, so that, you know, that the European Union would extend all the way over to the Near East.
You know, someday that kind of thing will happen, definitely.
Yeah. So
But these things are from an engineering perspective, they're possible. Even the Bering Strait, from an engineering perspective, is possible. And actually, the Bering Strait, you know, we know, let's not get into that. But anyway, so Father's international highway system, you know, even the Japan-Korea tunnel is actually the more difficult engineering challenge because of the depth of the strait there. Yeah, it's all these things will happen, but I think they will only happen when we've solved this thing with sin. That's only when that's when they will happen.
They were outside job.
Anyway, let's get back to this war on Christmas parties. As we celebrate this Christmas season or this holiday for Christmas haters, for Christ haters, I don't wish to be a killjoy in the world, but reflecting on the year gone by, it's hard not to notice that we have lost a few of our favorite things: Tom Petty, political moderation, our dignity. Who's writing this? Guy named Matt Labash. And yet, as we've hunkered down throughout 2017 to weather every storm, from Hurricane Harvey, the tropical cyclone that nearly destroyed Houston, to Hurricane Harvey, the film producer sex criminal who has all but destroyed famous men, there seems to be another death that has barely registered, that of the open bar office Christmas party. It's a time-honored tradition, and the Dilbertified America, most cubicle monkeys know the drill. Don your smart yet festive sweater vest. Show up to your company's voluntary holiday gathering, where absences are informally noted by supervisors who will passive-aggressively punish the missing coming January. Pretend you enjoy socializing with colleagues that you wouldn't invite over to your house on a dare, all while drinking until your liver cries uncle, or until Jones from purchasing miraculously transforms into a sparkling conversationalist. But the already ailing patient might have died on the table last week when news broke that Vox Media, after an internal sexual harassment scandal that saw editorial director Lockhart Steele get fired, announced of their holiday party in a staff memo. At the request of many of you, we will ramp up the food and cut down on the drinks. According to accuser Edin Rohansky's Medium post, after an apparent drinking bout, the man eventually revealed as Steele caressed her hand and kissed the back of her neck in an Uber. Vox Media, in case you don't read the internet, is, as they put it, with characteristic modesty, a prestigious modern media company that is shaping the future of journalism and entertainment. The parent company's myriad media outlets, or brands, as modern media companies now insist on calling themselves, include everything from tech news site The Verge to footy site Eater to the flagship itself, Vox.
Yeah, Tim. So you can't touch someone from the opposite sex now, which is why we need these sex bots. You see.
I see. They're creating a demand. They're creating a demand. I guess they're creating a demand.
It's part of the deep state strategy to keep us atomized.
Record wildfires ravage California. Weather eases battle, so maybe they're looking up there. Like war zone, blaze may last weeks. Shelter life wears on evacuees. Avocados hit with triple whammy of fire, wind, and ash. We may not have as many avocados as usual. Trump administration wants to move government offices out of D.C. We got that. Middle class tax pledge goals unfilled. We did that. New York City readies for boozy Santas. Oklahoma residents leery of planned bioterror test. What could go wrong there? Wall Street Journal, Mueller Pitbull lawyer at Hillary election night party. Roger Stone, president getting bad legal advice. He says that a couple of times.
Yeah, he's saying that a lot, actually.
Democrats could turn harassment crisis into opportunity. That's that's not just could, but I think they're trying very hard to. They're trying to turn this whole thing on President Trump, getting him to resign or putting pressure on him.
Imagine being a Democrat, Tim. And every day you wake up and you have to figure out what lie can you tell today? How can you try to bring goodness down today? What can you conspire at today to destroy what's happening that's good?
God gave us creativity.
How can it? Yeah, that's a lot of creativity there.
Yes. Big media scrambles to meet challenge from big tech. Bernie Sanders' wife still under FBI probe. Witness questioned. Grand jury review. Wolf whistling. Hate crime in London.
Do you know? I gotta say one thing.
Okay.
I saw a little thing on InfoWars last night. Okay, Tommy Robinson. Okay, he's my working class hero in the UK. I mean, the guy's so vulnerable. He's living in Luton, which is a working class town just an hour north of London, a couple hours north of London. He's living in his house unarmed. He's under jihadi threat all the time. His life is under threat all the time. He goes out with his young family. He's being followed around by police in the UK 8 hours a day. And they showed this guy. They showed the policemen there like, oh, I'm getting this order from above that they're telling me to follow you around, okay? So he did a little test. He inadvertently set off the alarm in his house to see how quickly the police come. Because in the UK, you got to wait for the police, right? You know, because the police are so diligent, right? So, you know, they don't want to waste any time on blockheads in the microwave, right? It took them 45 minutes to show up. 45 minutes. So here's Tommy Robinson sitting there being railroaded by his own government, totally vulnerable in a place, Luton, which over the past 5 years has increased to 17 mosques with black-clad, hijabs going up, marauding up and down the street. And his own, we got to get this guy. We got to find this guy. We got to bring this guy in. He represents all of working-class Britain. He represents Churchill. We can't let Britain die. We can't let Britain die.
Okay.
The divorce is in. Brexit is in. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay.
Now. Okay.
Thank you. I'm not sure what that had to do with wolf whistling, but anyway, London. We can't let Britain
what
die.
I'm saying is, the hate crime in London is to do wolf, or even to be a patriot, to carry a St. George's flag. The white flag with the red cross. Become a criminal.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Why does that? What is that?
Because hate speech.
Why does that? Why is that hate speech?
Because it goes against the current political climate, and you're exacerbating.
What does that symbolize?
It symbolizes the Christian tradition in Britain. It symbolizes protecting the rock of Christ in Britain. It was St. George that killed the dragon. The king talked about the dragon last week. The dragon represents all the Satans in one.
Yes.
It's King George killing the dragon to protect the realm of Christ. You know Edward Elgar. You know the song New Jerusalem. Okay, Britain's the New Jerusalem. You can't let Britain die, Tim.
I think we're going a little bit too far there. Anyway, truck carrying vodka bottles overturns on highway. Weekend Great Expectations, Blitz Grappolo. Something. I think that's a football story. All right, let's see. What shall we cover in the last few minutes that we have here? There was a shooting at a school in New Mexico, actually it was.
Really?
And a hero teacher saved 17 lives during New Mexico school shooting. The shooting Thursday morning at Aztec High School in northern New Mexico, could have been significantly worse had it not been for heroes who locked the school down and the police officers who ran inside. There were two heroes in particular, according to San Juan Sheriff Ken Christensen. One is a custodian, Thomas Hill, who ran around the school yelling for people to lock down. The other is a substitute teacher, Katie Potter. When Potter heard the shots being fired, she knew she had to hide the 17 students in her classroom. I heard popping sounds down the hall going pop, pop, pop. I looked in the hall, and the custodian Hill was in the hall, and he was saying, "Who are you?" I could tell he was frantic, and I knew what was going on, said Potter. Potter knew both victims, Francisco Fernandez and Casey Marquez. She described them as popular All-American students. Fernandez, however, was in her class that morning. He asked Potter if he could go to the bathroom, signed out, and never came back. When Fernandez opened the bathroom door, the shooter was standing inside and with his gun loaded. He walked into that bathroom and saved lives. If not, the shooter would have walked into a classroom. That kid's a hero, said New Mexico State Police Chief Pete Casetas. Potter told all the kids to get into the classroom's office. They got inside, pushed the sofa against the door, and laid on the floor. This is a beef that I have.
Okay.
Lay. Actually, I think here they didn't lay on the floor. They lay on the floor.
You mean
I see this misused so many times.
Linguistic beef.
Yes, a grammatic beef.
Okay.
Yes. Then they waited.
What is the correct?
Lay.
Lay.
They lay on
They
the
lay
floor.
on the floor.
Yes.
Not laid.
The past tense of lie is lay.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes.
That actually makes sense. Think of it.
Well, now I'm confused. But anyway, then they waited. The students inside were quiet as they were trained to be in lockdown. But many people are confused about this. Maybe I'm confused at this hour of the morning. I'm not sure. The students inside were quiet as they were trained to be in a lockdown, according to Potter, but some were scared. Because anyway, I lay this on the floor.
Right.
I laid this on the floor. That's correct. But I lay on the floor, or I lay on the floor. Both present and past.
Okay.
I think that's correct. The students inside were quiet as they were trained to be in a lockdown, according to Potter, but some were scared. They knew they were in a serious danger, and some of them said, "I don't want to die." And I said, "You know what? You're going to be okay," said Potter. The shooter found the students in the room with Potter. He tried to get in, but couldn't because of the sofa barricading the door. Then he shot through the walls, but miraculously never hit anyone. I heard pop, pop, pop for probably 4 or 5 minutes, and he was right outside the door. And I knew he was shooting everything up, said Potter. Eventually, Potter heard the sheriff's department yell out. She opened the door and knew they were safe. She doesn't consider herself a hero, but says the students and other teachers are the real heroes. She also said she'll be back substituting as soon as possible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's good.
It's a shame. So anyway, but again, a shooter went in there. Because, and it says here, the shooter left a note saying he hated life, wanted to go into the school to die, and take as many students as he could with him. See?
Yeah.
Because he knew that if he went into a school, he would be the only one carrying a weapon.
Yeah. There you go.
He knew that. And so he purposely chose to go into a school to kill as many students as he could and then kill himself. Because he wanted to die, but he didn't want to die alone. And it's the unfortunate thing about this story is that fortunately, as it turns out, maybe unfortunately, but fortunately, only 2 students died. And because of this teacher's quick actions and the quick action of the custodian, perhaps, well, the custodian was locking everybody down, so that saved lives. But the unfortunate thing, though, is that no one else had a gun.
Just an argument for peace, police, peace, militia,
Yes.
Tim.
And that really is the unfortunate thing, because the shooter was just shooting at will, just going pop, 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 shooting everything around, shooting everything in sight, and trying to get through this barricaded door. And the custodian didn't have a gun. The teacher didn't have a gun. All they could do was lie. You can imagine how scared the kids must have been during the time that they were waiting for the police to come and give an all clear, or waiting for the guy to kill himself. I guess they were actually safe once the guy killed himself, and he killed himself in frustration, I guess, because he couldn't kill as many students as he wanted. But it's a shame that the people were not armed, and were not equipped to take care of this kind of a situation. It's good that they had trained these students to be quiet in this kind of a situation, but it's a shame that they were not properly equipped to protect the lives of the students.
We're getting there, Tim. We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Every
one by
day.
one. Yeah, concealed carry past the House. May run into trouble in the Senate, and actually the gun owners of America, if you look at their website, they don't really like the bill. You can go there and read that story directly on their website. I think it's the lead story on their website. So anyway, that brings us to the end of today's broadcast. Thank you very much for joining us. And share this video if you don't want to see us putting our heads into microwaves. All right?
We might do that next week.
Or maybe they won't share because they want to see that. I don't know.
I got a lot of time on my hands.
Anyway, God
Never
bless,
know.
Godspeed, and may His kingdom come. Have a good week.